Kodiak bear destroys hunting lodge, $250,000 damages 3 dead, August 15, 2025. The morning mist clung to the dense spruce forests of Kodiak Island like a shroud, obscuring the jagged peaks of the Kodiak Mountains that rose nearly 4,000 feet above Silver Creek Lodge. The remote hunting outfitter, nestled in a clearing beside the rushing waters of Silver Creek, 23 miles southwest of Kodiak City, had stood for 37 years as a testament to human ambition in one of Alaska's most unforgiving wilderness areas. Built from locally harvested Sitka spruce logs and reinforced with steel brackets designed to withstand the island's notorious winds, the lodge represented a $1.2 million investment by owner Marcus Wellington, a former oil executive from Texas who had fallen in love with Kodiak's pristine wilderness during a fishing expedition in 1987. The lodge itself was an impressive structure stretching 120 feet in length and 40 feet in width, featuring a massive great room with 20-foot cathedral ceilings, 8 guest rooms each with private bathrooms, a commercial kitchen capable of feeding 30 people, and a trophy room lined with the mounted heads of brown bears, Sitka black-tailed deer, and Roosevelt elk. The foundation consisted of reinforced concrete pilings driven 8 feet into the permafrost, designed to prevent settling and provide stability against seismic activity common to the region. Double-pane windows offered panoramic views of the surrounding wilderness while keeping the harsh Alaskan elements at bay, and a state-of-the-art heating system ensured comfort even during the bitter winter months when temperatures could plummet to 20 below zero. Marcus Wellington himself was a man of 58 years, his weathered face bearing the lines of someone who had spent decades outdoors despite his corporate background. Standing 6 feet 2 inches tall with graying brown hair and piercing blue eyes, Marcus possessed the kind of quiet confidence that comes from successfully navigating both boardrooms and bear country. His hands, calloused from years of chopping wood and maintaining equipment, told the story of his transformation from petroleum executive to wilderness lodge operator. After selling his share in a Houston-based oil exploration company for $43 million, Marcus had purchased the 1,200 acres surrounding Silver Creek, including mineral rights and timber harvesting permissions that would ensure the lodge's long-term financial viability. The decision to build Silver Creek Lodge had not been made lightly. Marcus had spent 2 full years studying the area, consulting with wildlife biologists, indigenous Alutiiq elders, and veteran guides before breaking ground. The location was ideal for hunting brown bears, with Silver Creek serving as a major salmon run that attracted bears from across the island. The creek itself originated from glacial melt high in the mountains, flowing 37 miles through old-growth forests before emptying into Karluk Lake. During peak salmon season, typically running from late July through early September, the creek would literally boil with spawning fish, creating a feeding frenzy that drew some of the largest brown bears in North America. Dr. Sarah Chen, a wildlife biologist from the University of Alaska Fairbanks, who had been studying Kodiak brown bears for 15 years, had initially opposed the lodge's construction. Her research, funded by grants from the National Science Foundation and the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, focused on bear behavior patterns and human-wildlife conflict mitigation. Dr. Chen, 39 years old with shoulder-length black hair and an intense gaze behind wire-rimmed glasses, had documented over 300 individual bears in the Silver Creek drainage over the course of her career. Her opposition to the lodge stemmed not from environmental concerns, but from her intimate knowledge of the area's apex predator. The Silver Creek drainage is home to some of the most aggressive and territorial brown bears I've ever encountered, Dr. Chen had testified during the permit hearings in 2018. These animals, particularly the dominant males, view this area as their exclusive domain. Introducing human presence on a permanent basis is asking for trouble. Her warnings had been noted but ultimately dismissed by the Alaska Department of Natural Resources, which approved the lodge's construction permit based on economic impact studies showing the potential for significant tourism revenue and job creation. The brown bears of Kodiak Island were indeed legendary. Ursus arctos middendorfi, the Kodiak brown bear, represented the largest subspecies of brown bear in the world. Adult males could reach weights exceeding 1,500 pounds and stand over 10 feet tall on their hind legs. Unlike their mainland cousins, Kodiak bears had evolved in isolation for over 10,000 years, developing unique characteristics that made them particularly formidable. Their massive size was attributed to the island's abundant salmon runs, rich berry crops, and lack of competition from other large predators. The absence of wolves on Kodiak Island meant that bears faced no significant threats aside from other bears, leading to the evolution of increasingly large and aggressive animals. Thomas Reed had been dreaming of hunting a Kodiak brown bear for 23 years. The 54-year-old construction company owner from Billings, Montana, had built Reed Construction from a one-man operation into a regional powerhouse, employing over 200 people. His company specialized in large commercial projects, including shopping centers, office buildings, and municipal facilities throughout Montana, Wyoming, and the Dakotas. Thomas stood 5 feet 10 inches tall, with a stocky build that spoke to years of physical labor before transitioning to management. His salt and pepper beard framed a square jaw, and his brown eyes held the intensity of someone accustomed to making quick decisions under pressure. The desire to hunt a Kodiak bear had consumed Thomas since his first successful elk hunt in 1992. He had taken game across North America, including moose in Alaska, caribou in the Northwest Territories, and even a Cape buffalo in South Africa. His trophy room in Billings showcased over 40 mounted animals, but the centerpiece remained empty, waiting for what he considered the ultimate trophy, a massive Kodiak brown bear. Thomas had applied for hunting permits for 7 consecutive years before finally drawing a tag for the 2025 season. The permit alone had cost him $8,000, not including the $25,000 fee for Silver Creek Lodge's premium guided hunt package. Calvin Foster represented a different type of hunter entirely. The 42-year-old trauma surgeon from Denver, Colorado, approached hunting with the same methodical precision he brought to the operating room. Standing 6 feet tall with an athletic build, maintained through regular CrossFit training, Calvin possessed steady hands and nerves that had saved countless lives during his 15-year medical career. His blonde hair was always perfectly styled, and his green eyes missed nothing. Calvin had discovered hunting during medical school as a way to decompress from the enormous stress of his studies. What began as deer hunting in Colorado had evolved into a passion that took him around the world in pursuit of various game species. Unlike Thomas, who hunted for the thrill and the trophy, Calvin found hunting to be a philosophical pursuit. He wrote extensively in outdoor magazines about the ethics of fair chase hunting and the role of hunters in conservation efforts. His home office contained a library of over 300 books on hunting, wildlife biology, and conservation history. Calvin had taken animals on 5 continents, always ensuring that his hunts contributed to local conservation efforts and community development. His decision to hunt Kodiak bears had been years in the making, involving extensive research into bear biology, hunting techniques, and the specific challenges posed by these massive predators. Hunter Lane, despite his name, was the least experienced hunter of the group. The 28-year-old software engineer from Seattle, Washington, had only been hunting for 5 years, but his passion and dedication had impressed even veteran hunters. Standing 6 feet 3 inches tall with a lean build, Hunter possessed the kind of natural athleticism that served him well in the outdoors. His dark hair and brown eyes gave him a youthful appearance that belied his intelligence and determination. Hunter had graduated from the University of Washington with a degree in computer science and had built a successful career developing outdoor recreation apps, including several that were widely used by hunters and anglers. Hunter's introduction to hunting had come through his girlfriend's father, a retired Marine who believed that modern men had lost touch with their primal instincts. What began as reluctant participation in family hunting trips had evolved into a genuine passion that consumed Hunter's free time and discretionary income. He had taken his first deer at age 23 and had since harvested elk, antelope, and black bear. The opportunity to hunt Kodiak brown bears represented the ultimate challenge for someone still building his hunting resume. Hunter had spent months preparing for the trip, practicing with his rifle daily and studying everything he could find about brown bear behavior and hunting techniques. The three men had met through an online hunting forum dedicated to big game hunting. Their friendship had developed over 2 years of exchanging hunting stories, sharing photographs, and debating various aspects of their shared passion. When Thomas finally drew his Kodiak permit, he had immediately reached out to Calvin and Hunter, inviting them to join him on what he called the hunt of a lifetime. The fact that Silver Creek Lodge offered group packages for up to 6 hunters made the invitation financially feasible for all 3 men. Silver Creek Lodge's head guide was Benjamin Bear Morrison, a man whose reputation in the hunting community was legendary. The 61-year-old Alaska native had been guiding hunters for 38 years, starting as an assistant guide when he was just 23 years old. Standing 5 feet 11 inches tall with a powerful build developed through decades of wilderness work, Bear possessed an intimate knowledge of Kodiak Island that few could match. His weathered face, framed by a gray beard and topped with a well-worn baseball cap, spoke to years spent in all weather conditions. Bear's hands, scarred from encounters with fish hooks, knives, and the occasional disagreeable client, could field dress a moose or perform delicate rifle maintenance with equal skill. Bear had been born in the native village of Akiok on the southern tip of Kodiak Island. His Alutiiq heritage provided him with traditional knowledge passed down through generations, including an understanding of brown bear behavior that went beyond academic study. Bear's grandfather, a respected elder named Paul Moonin, had taught him to read the signs that indicated bear presence, the distinctive claw marks on trees, the pattern of tracks in various soil conditions, the scent markers that bears use to communicate with each other. This traditional knowledge, combined with nearly 4 decades of guiding experience, made Bear one of the most sought-after guides in Alaska. The tragedy that would unfold at Silver Creek Lodge on August 15, 2025, had its roots in events that began weeks earlier. Dr. Chen's research had documented a dramatic shift in bear behavior patterns throughout the Silver Creek drainage during the summer of 2025. The salmon run, typically predictable in its timing and intensity, had been disrupted by unusually warm water temperatures and drought conditions that had reduced stream flows to levels not seen in over 20 years. These environmental factors had concentrated the salmon run into a much shorter time frame, creating intense competition among bears for access to prime fishing spots. The bear that would ultimately destroy Silver Creek Lodge was a massive male that Dr. Chen had been tracking for 7 years. She had designated him Bear 451 in her research database, but the local guides knew him by a different name, Goliath. Estimated to weigh over 1,400 pounds, Goliath stood nearly 11 feet tall on his hind legs and possessed a distinctly scarred face that spoke to decades of territorial battles. His left ear bore a distinctive notch from an encounter with another male bear 3 years earlier, making him easily identifiable from a distance. Goliath's territory encompassed nearly 50 square miles of prime habitat, including the entire Silver Creek drainage, and several smaller tributaries that fed into the creek. Dr. Chen's research notes, maintained in meticulous detail, documented Goliath's increasingly aggressive behavior throughout the summer of 2025. Unlike most brown bears, which typically avoided human contact, Goliath had begun showing signs of what wildlife biologists termed food conditioning, the dangerous association of humans with potential food sources. This behavior had been triggered by several incidents involving poorly managed hunting camps in adjacent areas where guides had failed to properly secure food and garbage. While Silver Creek Lodge maintained exemplary bear safety protocols, including electric fencing around the garbage area and strict food storage procedures, Goliath's expanding territory had begun to overlap with the lodge's location. The morning of August 10th, 2025, marked the beginning of what would become the deadliest week in Silver Creek Lodge's history. Thomas, Calvin, and Hunter arrived at Kodiak's airport aboard a chartered de Havilland Beaver floatplane, their excitement palpable despite the long journey from the lower 48 states. The flight from Kodiak City to Silver Creek Lodge took 37 minutes, with pilot Jake Sullivan providing a running commentary on the terrain below. Sullivan, a 45-year-old former military pilot who'd been flying in Alaska for 18 years, possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of Kodiak Island's geography and wildlife. "That's the Silver Creek drainage opening up below us," Sullivan announced through the intercom as the Beaver banked left to line up with the lodge's landing strip. "You can see why the bears love this area. That creek is absolutely loaded with salmon right now." Through the aircraft's windows, the three hunters could see the crystal-clear water of Silver Creek winding through the forest, with dark shapes visible beneath the surface that could only be spawning salmon. The sight sent a thrill of anticipation through all three men, knowing that where salmon gathered, bears would follow. The landing strip at Silver Creek Lodge was a marvel of engineering, carved from the wilderness by Marcus Wellington himself, using heavy equipment barged over from the mainland. The gravel runway stretched 2,800 feet in length and was 40 feet wide, designed to accommodate aircraft up to the size of a twin otter. Solar-powered runway lights marked both ends of the strip, while windsocks indicated the frequently changing wind conditions. A hangar built from the same Sitka spruce logs as the lodge housed the facility's maintenance equipment and provided shelter for visiting aircraft during inclement weather. Marcus Wellington stood waiting beside the runway as the Beaver touched down, its tires sending up small clouds of dust from the well-maintained gravel surface. His greeting was warm but professional, the demeanor of someone who understood that his clients were paying premium prices for a premium experience. "Welcome to Silver Creek Lodge, gentlemen," Marcus said as the hunters disembarked. "I hope you're ready for the adventure of a lifetime." His words would prove prophetic in ways none of them could have imagined. Bear Morrison emerged from the lodge as the hunters gathered their equipment. His assessment of the three men was quick but thorough, the evaluation of someone who had guided hundreds of hunters and could quickly identify potential problems. Thomas appeared confident and experienced, his movements economical and purposeful. Calvin displayed the calm demeanor of someone accustomed to high-pressure situations, while Hunter's enthusiasm was evident but tempered by respect for the environment they were entering. Bear's initial impression was positive. These men appeared to understand the seriousness of hunting Kodiak brown bears. The lodge's interior exceeded even the hunters' elevated expectations. The great room featured massive log walls adorned with trophy mounts from across North America, while a stone fireplace dominated one wall. Comfortable leather furniture provided seating areas where hunters could relax and share stories, while large windows offered panoramic views of the surrounding wilderness. The commercial kitchen, visible through a pass-through window, was staffed by Maria Santos, a chef who had trained at culinary school in Seattle before choosing the adventure of cooking in remote Alaska. Her meals at Silver Creek Lodge had become legendary among hunting clients, providing both the calories needed for strenuous hunting days and the comfort of exceptional cuisine. Room assignments placed Thomas in the Kodiak Suite, the lodge's largest accommodation, featuring a king-size bed, private bathroom with jetted tub, and sitting area with panoramic windows overlooking Silver Creek. Calvin was assigned to the Sitka room, slightly smaller, but featuring handcrafted furniture made from local birch and cedar. Hunter received the Alutiiq room, decorated with native artwork and featuring a private deck that extended over the creek. Each room was equipped with individual heating controls, high-quality bedding, and writing desks where hunters could maintain journals of their experiences. The first evening at Silver Creek Lodge followed a ritual that had been refined over 37 years of operation. After the hunters had settled into their rooms and unpacked their equipment, Bear conducted a comprehensive briefing in the lodge's conference room. The presentation covered safety protocols, hunting regulations, bear behavior, shot placement techniques, and emergency procedures. Bear's delivery was matter-of-fact but engaging, drawing on decades of experience to illustrate key points with memorable stories. "Brown bears are not malicious animals," Bear explained, clicking through a presentation filled with photographs of massive bears. "They're simply trying to survive in an environment where size and aggression determine access to food and territory. Our job as hunters is to respect that reality while pursuing our goals safely and ethically." His words carried the weight of experience, and all three hunters found themselves hanging on every detail. Bear's presentation included specific information about Goliath, though he referred to the bear only as a large, dominant male that frequents the upper drainage. The safety protocols at Silver Creek Lodge were comprehensive and non-negotiable. All hunters were required to carry bear spray in addition to their rifles, and guides carried both bear spray and backup firearms. Communication equipment included satellite phones and GPS beacons that could summon emergency assistance from anywhere on the island. Food storage followed protocols developed by the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, with all meals consumed in designated areas and no food allowed in guest rooms under any circumstances. Garbage was stored in bear-proof containers and transported off the island weekly. Dr. Chen had established a remote monitoring station 3 miles upstream from Silver Creek Lodge, part of her ongoing research into brown bear behavior patterns. The station consisted of motion-activated cameras, audio recording equipment, and sensors that could detect the approach of large animals. Data from the monitoring station was transmitted daily to her research facility at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, providing real-time information about bear activity in the area. The data from August 10th through August 14th would later prove crucial in understanding the events that led to the lodge's destruction. The morning of August 11th dawned clear and cool, with temperatures in the mid-40s and light winds from the northwest. Thomas, Calvin, and Hunter were awake before sunrise, their excitement preventing any hope of sleeping late. The lodge's breakfast featured fresh-baked bread, locally sourced eggs, bacon, and strong coffee that had been carefully selected to provide the energy needed for a full day of hunting. Maria's attention to detail extended to preparing trail lunches that would remain appetizing even after hours in a backpack. Bear's hunting strategy for the first day was conservative, but thorough. The group would hike to an observation point overlooking the main salmon spawning area, where they could study bear behavior patterns and identify potential targets. The hike itself covered 4 miles of challenging terrain, including stream crossings, steep inclines, and areas where recent bear activity was evident. Bear's commentary during the hike was educational and engaging, pointing out signs that indicated the presence of different animals. "See those claw marks on that spruce tree?" Bear asked. pointing to gouges in the bark nearly 10 feet above ground level. That's a territorial marker from a very large bear. The height and spacing of those marks suggest an animal that would go well over 1,200 pounds. The hunters examined the marks with fascination, marveling at the power required to leave such deep gouges in living wood. Thomas took photographs of the claw marks for reference, while Calvin measured the spacing between individual scratches. Hunter simply stared in awe, beginning to comprehend the size of the animals they were pursuing. The observation point was a rocky outcropping that provided an unobstructed view of a quarter-mile stretch of Silver Creek, where salmon congregated in calm pools before making their final push to spawning areas. The sight that greeted the hunters was extraordinary. Hundreds of salmon filled the water, their silver bodies flashing in the morning sunlight as they fought against the current. The abundance of fish was matched by the number of bears taking advantage of the feeding opportunity. Bear counted 8 different animals visible from their vantage point, ranging from a sow with 2 cubs to several large males that maintained careful distances from each other. "That's what we call a fishing hole," Bear explained quietly, his voice barely audible above the sound of rushing water. "The bears have established a hierarchy here. The largest animals get the best spots, while smaller bears and females with cubs feed on the periphery." Through his binoculars, Thomas could see the intricate social dynamics playing out below. A massive male bear dominated the center of the spawning area, his fishing technique both efficient and violent. With lightning-fast movements, the bear would pin salmon against the rocky bottom and then deliver killing bites with crushing force. Calvin, observing through his own binoculars, was struck by the bear's intelligence and adaptability. "Look at how they've positioned themselves," he whispered to Hunter. "Each bear has found a spot that maximizes fishing success while minimizing conflict with larger animals. It's like watching a complex negotiation play out in real time." Hunter nodded in agreement, his software engineer's mind appreciating the optimization strategies being employed by animals that most people considered to be simple predators. The bear that would later be identified as Goliath made his first appearance at 11:30 in the morning. His arrival at the fishing hole created an immediate disturbance among the other bears, with smaller animals retreating to less productive areas to avoid confrontation. Goliath's fishing technique was different from the other bears, displaying a level of efficiency that spoke to decades of experience. Rather than pursuing individual salmon, he positioned himself in a narrow channel where fish were forced to pass within striking distance. His success rate was remarkable, with nearly every strike resulting in a captured fish. "Now that's a bear worth our attention," Bear said quietly, studying Goliath through high-powered spotting scope. "I'd estimate him at 1,300 to 1,400 pounds, maybe more. That's exactly the kind of animal you gentlemen are here to hunt." The excitement among the 3 hunters was palpable, but Bear cautioned them against premature enthusiasm. "Big bears like that don't get to be big and old by being careless. He'll be extremely difficult to approach, and he won't give us many opportunities." The remainder of the first day was spent studying bear behavior and planning hunting strategies for the following morning. Bear's experience told him that Goliath would likely return to the same fishing spot as dominant males, typically established predictable patterns during productive feeding periods. The challenge would be positioning the hunters within rifle range without alerting the bear to their presence. Brown bears possessed extraordinary senses of hearing and smell, making close approaches extremely difficult even for experienced hunters. That evening's dinner at Silver Creek Lodge was a celebration of their first day's success. Maria had prepared fresh salmon caught by Bear that morning, accompanied by roasted vegetables and wild rice. The conversation flowed freely as the hunters shared their impressions of the day and discussed strategies for tomorrow's hunt. Marcus Wellington joined them for dinner, sharing stories from 37 years of lodge operation and offering insights into the unique challenges of hunting Kodiak brown bears. The key to success with these bears is patience, Marcus explained between bites of perfectly prepared salmon. They're not like other game animals that can be pushed or pressured. Brown bears operate on their own schedule, and successful hunters learn to adapt to that reality. His words carried the authority of someone who had seen hundreds of hunts succeed or fail based on the hunter's ability to respect the quarry they were pursuing. Dr. Chen's monitoring station recorded unusual activity during the night of August 11th. Goliath had remained in the area far longer than his established pattern suggested, continuing to fish well after dark and showing none of the typical signs of returning to his daybed. The audio recordings captured vocalizations that Dr. Chen had rarely documented, a series of low grunts and huffs that in her research notes she described as agitated communication. The significance of these recordings would not become apparent until after the tragedy at Silver Creek Lodge. August 12th dawned overcast and windy, with a storm system moving in from the Gulf of Alaska. The weather forecast called for rain beginning in the late afternoon, which would significantly complicate hunting conditions, but might also concentrate bear activity around the most productive fishing areas. Bear made the decision to attempt an approach on Goliath despite the challenging conditions, knowing that the upcoming weather might not provide another opportunity for several days. The hunting party departed the lodge at 5:30 in the morning, hiking through pre-dawn darkness with headlamps to illuminate the trail. The route to their intended hunting position required crossing Silver Creek at two different locations, where recent rains had raised water levels and increased the current strength. Bear tested each crossing carefully, using his experience to find the safest routes across the rushing water. The hunters followed single file, their rifle cases and backpacks sealed in waterproof bags to protect essential equipment. The approach to their hunting position took nearly 3 hours, covering terrain that challenged even the hunters' considerable physical fitness. The route included a steep climb up a ridge that provided access to the bear's fishing area while maintaining downwind positioning. Bear's selection of the hunting location was based on years of experience and intimate knowledge of wind patterns, terrain features, and bear behavior. The final approach required crawling the last 200 yards through dense alderbrush, with visibility limited to just a few feet in any direction. Goliath was already fishing when the hunting party reached their position. The massive bear had claimed the same productive spot as the previous day, his fishing technique displaying the efficiency that had made him the dominant animal in the drainage. From their concealed position, the hunters could observe the bear's every movement while remaining undetected. Bear estimated the range at 180 yards, a challenging shot, but well within the capabilities of all three hunters. Thomas, as the permit holder, would have the first opportunity to take the bear. His rifle, a custom .375 H&H Magnum, built by a renowned gunsmith in Montana, was perfectly suited for the task. The weapon featured a match-grade barrel, custom stock fitted specifically to Thomas's dimensions, and a high-quality scope that had been zeroed at precisely 175 yards. Thomas had practiced extensively with this rifle, achieving consistent accuracy at ranges exceeding 300 yards. The shot opportunity came at 9:15 in the morning. Goliath had just caught a large salmon and was moving toward the creek bank to consume his catch. The bear's positioning offered a perfect broadside presentation, with vital organs clearly exposed. Thomas settled into his shooting position, controlling his breathing and aligning the crosshairs with deadly precision. Bear whispered final instructions about shot placement, emphasizing the critical importance of the first shot when hunting dangerous game. Thomas squeezed the trigger with the smooth follow-through that had been drilled into him through years of practice. The rifle's report echoed through the valley as the 300-grain bullet traveled across the distance at over 2,400 feet per second. The shot placement was perfect, striking Goliath in the heart-lung area with devastating effect. The massive bear stumbled but did not immediately fall, instead spinning toward the direction of the shot with a roar that sent chills through all three hunters. What happened next would be debated by wildlife experts for years to come. Rather than collapsing or fleeing as most wounded bears would, Goliath charged directly toward the hunter's position. His initial sprint covered over 50 yards before the full effects of the mortal wound began to slow his advance. A second shot from Thomas struck the bear in the shoulder, spinning him partially around, but failing to stop the charge. Calvin and Hunter both had rifles ready, but held their fire, trusting in Bear's guidance about when additional shots might be necessary. The charge ended when Goliath collapsed just 60 yards from the hunter's position, his massive body finally succumbing to the effects of Thomas's well-placed shots. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the sound of Silver Creek and the hunter's rapid breathing. Bear waited a full 10 minutes before approaching the downed bear, his rifle ready for any sign of life. Experience had taught him that wounded bears could appear dead while retaining enough strength for a final attack. The bear's measurements exceeded even Bear's estimates. Goliath weighed an estimated 1,530 pounds and measured 10 feet 11 inches from nose to tail. His skull measurements would later score high enough to rank among the top 50 Kodiak brown bears ever recorded in the Boone and Crockett record book. For Thomas, the successful hunt represented the culmination of decades of planning and preparation. For Calvin and Hunter, witnessing the hunt provided insights into their own goals and the realities of pursuing the world's largest land predator. The celebration at Silver Creek Lodge that evening was subdued but heartfelt. Maria prepared a special dinner featuring the last fresh supplies that would arrive before the storm system moved through the area. The conversation focused on the details of the successful hunt and the impressive nature of the bear that Thomas had taken. Bear regaled them with stories of other notable bears he had guided hunters to over the years, while Marcus shared the history of record book animals taken from the Silver Creek drainage. Dr. Chen's monitoring station recorded a significant change in bear activity patterns following Goliath's death. Several bears that had previously avoided the main fishing area began moving into the territory that Goliath had dominated. The recordings captured aggressive vocalizations from multiple animals as they established new territorial boundaries. One set of recordings, made at 11:30 that evening, documented the approach of an animal that triggered the station's large animal sensors but remained beyond the range of the cameras. August 13th brought the predicted storm system with heavy rain and winds gusting to over 40 miles per hour. Hunting was impossible under these conditions, so the day was spent maintaining equipment, sharing hunting stories, and planning for the final days of the hunt. Calvin and Hunter both had bear permits and hoped to find opportunities once the weather cleared. Bear was optimistic about their chances, as the storm would concentrate bear activity around the most productive fishing areas. The rain continued through August 14th, keeping everyone confined to the lodge. Marcus used the time to show his guests the extensive trophy collection that filled the lodge's great room. Each mount represented a successful hunt and told a story of adventure in Alaska's wilderness. The collection included several bears that exceeded 13 feet in length, along with moose, caribou, and Sitka blacktail deer taken by hunters over the years. For Calvin and Hunter, examining these trophies provided inspiration and education about the animals they hoped to pursue. Dr. Chen's research notes from August 14th documented an unusual concentration of bears in the Silver Creek drainage. Her monitoring station recorded the presence of at least 12 different animals within a 2-mile radius of the lodge, the highest concentration she had documented in 7 years of research. The rain had washed away much of the human scent that typically caused bears to avoid areas around the lodge. More significantly, Goliath's death had created a power vacuum that was attracting bears from across the island as they competed for access to prime fishing territory. The morning of August 15th dawned clear and calm, with brilliant sunshine breaking through the dissipating storm clouds. The temperature had dropped to 38 degrees during the night, creating perfect hunting conditions as bears would be active after 2 days of limited feeding due to the weather. Bear was eager to get Calvin and Hunter into the field, as the weather window might not last long, with another storm system forecast to arrive within 48 hours. The hunting party departed Silver Creek Lodge at 6 o'clock in the morning, following a different route than they had used for Thomas's successful hunt. Bear's strategy was to position the hunters overlooking a series of beaver ponds, where bears often fed on spawning salmon trapped in the shallow water. The hike to the hunting area took 2 hours through terrain made challenging by the recent rains, which had created muddy conditions and swollen stream crossings. The Beaver Pond complex was a remarkable natural feature, consisting of 7 interconnected ponds created by generations of industrious beavers. The ponds served as spawning areas for salmon that had completed their upstream migration, and the shallow water made fishing easy for bears of all sizes. Bear had guided successful hunts in this area for over 20 years, taking advantage of the predictable bear behavior around these productive fishing spots. Calvin would have the first shooting opportunity, as his permit had been purchased earlier than Hunter's. His rifle was a .338 Winchester Magnum, a caliber perfectly suited for brown bear hunting, with sufficient power to ensure clean kills while remaining manageable for accurate shot placement. Calvin had practiced extensively with this rifle, developing the confidence and familiarity necessary for hunting dangerous game. His shooting position overlooked the largest of the beaver ponds from a distance of approximately 150 yards. The first bear appeared at the beaver ponds at 8:20 in the morning. It was a medium-sized male, probably weighing around 800 pounds, that began fishing in the shallows with efficient movements. Bear judged the animal to be a good representative trophy, but counseled patience, as larger bears often appeared once smaller animals had established that the area was safe. Calvin agreed to wait, understanding that patience was often the key to success when hunting trophy animals. At 9:45, a much larger bear emerged from the forest and approached the beaver ponds. This animal was clearly a mature male, displaying the massive size and confident demeanor of a dominant bear. Bear estimated its weight at over 1,200 pounds, making it an exceptional trophy by any standard. The bear's approach caused the smaller male to retreat to the far end of the pond complex, clearly recognizing the size difference and avoiding potential conflict. Calvin's shot opportunity came as the large bear began fishing in the main pond. The animal was positioned broadside at 143 yards, presenting a perfect target for an experienced marksman. Calvin controlled his breathing and aligned his scope's crosshairs with the bear's vital zone, just behind the front shoulder. Bear whispered final encouragement about shot placement and follow-up procedures. The .338 Winchester Magnum's report echoed across the beaver pond complex as Calvin's shot struck the bear with devastating accuracy. The 250-grain bullet penetrated perfectly, causing massive internal damage and dropping the bear within 20 yards of where it had been shot. The quick, clean kill demonstrated Calvin's marksmanship skills and the effectiveness of proper shot placement when hunting dangerous game. Bear waited the customary 10 minutes before approaching the downed animal, confirming that Calvin had taken an exceptional trophy. The bear's measurements were impressive by any standard. It weighed an estimated 1,270 pounds and measured 10 feet 4 inches in length. The skull would later score high enough to qualify for the Boone and Crockett record book, representing a once-in-a-lifetime trophy for Calvin. The successful hunt provided a sense of accomplishment that justified years of planning and the considerable expense of traveling to Kodiak Island. Hunter's opportunity would have to wait until the following day, as Bear's experience suggested that the gunshots and field dressing activities would disturb other bears in the immediate area. The afternoon was spent photographing Calvin's trophy and beginning the process of preparing the hide and skull for shipment to a taxidermist. Bear's expertise in field care ensured that the trophy would be properly preserved despite the challenging field conditions. That evening's dinner at Silver Creek Lodge was another celebration, with Calvin's success providing the centerpiece for conversation. Maria had prepared a special meal featuring locally sourced ingredients, including fresh halibut that had been flown in from Kodiak City that morning. The atmosphere was relaxed and jovial, with all three hunters satisfied by the success of their expedition thus far. Only Hunter remained to fill his permit, and Bear was confident about finding him a suitable trophy animal. The conversation during dinner touched on the abundance of bears in the area and the impressive size of the animals they had encountered. Marcus mentioned that the current season had produced some of the largest bears he had seen in his 37 years of lodge operation. Dr. Chen's research, unknown to the hunters, had documented this same phenomenon, attributing it to favorable feeding conditions and reduced territorial pressure following Goliath's death. As darkness settled over Silver Creek Lodge, none of the occupants were aware that their conversations were being monitored by a massive brown bear that had approached to within 200 yards of the main building. This animal, designated Bear 187 in Dr. Chen's research database, but known to guides as the Ghost due to his ability to move undetected through the forest, had arrived in the area following Goliath's death. At an estimated weight of over 1,600 pounds, the Ghost was potentially the largest bear on Kodiak Island, an animal that had avoided human contact for over a decade. The Ghost's approach to Silver Creek Lodge was unprecedented in Dr. Chen's years of research. Her monitoring station recorded his arrival at 10:37 p.m., with sensors indicating an animal of extraordinary size moving through the forest with surprising stealth. The audio recordings captured none of the typical vocalizations associated with bear movement, suggesting an animal that was deliberately attempting to remain undetected. This behavior was highly unusual for brown bears, which typically announce their presence to avoid surprising other bears or potential threats. The lodge's garbage storage area, protected by electric fencing and bear-proof containers, showed signs of investigation during the night. While the bear had not attempted to breach the security measures, his presence was evident in tracks that measured over 14 inches in length and showed the distinctive claw marks of a massive male. These tracks would be discovered by Bear Morrison the following morning, providing the first indication that an exceptionally large animal had visited the lodge during the night. Dr. Chen's monitoring equipment also recorded unusual electromagnetic interference during the early morning hours of August 15th, suggesting the presence of a large metal object in the area. This interference would later be attributed to the Ghost's interaction with the lodge's electric fencing system, though the bear had apparently tested the system without actually touching the charged wires. This behavior demonstrated a level of intelligence and caution that was remarkable even for brown bears, which were known for their problem-solving abilities. The morning of August 15th began like any other at Silver Creek Lodge, with the hunters awakening early despite their late-night celebration. Bear's discovery of the massive tracks near the garbage area provided an exciting start to the day, as the size of the prints suggested an animal larger than either of the bears that Thomas and Calvin had successfully harvested. For Hunter, still hoping to fill his permit, the tracks represented the possibility of taking an exceptional trophy animal. Bear's examination of the tracks revealed several concerning details that he kept to himself rather than alarming his clients. The tracks showed that the bear had spent considerable time investigating the lodge's perimeter, moving in a systematic pattern that suggested careful reconnaissance rather than casual exploration. More troubling was the absence of the typical caution that bears showed around human habitation. The tracks approached to within 50 feet of the main lodge building, indicating an animal that felt no fear of human presence. The hunting plan for August 15th called for positioning Hunter at a different location from the beaver ponds, as Bear believed the large bear might be using a travel corridor that connected several feeding areas. This route would take the hunting party to an elevated position overlooking a salmon spawning area 3 miles upstream from the lodge. The location had produced several trophy animals over the years and offered multiple shooting positions depending on wind direction and bear movement patterns. The hike to the hunting area began at 7 o'clock in the morning, with perfect weather conditions providing unlimited visibility and calm winds. Bear's route followed game trails that had been used by both bears and hunters for generations, winding through old-growth forest and across mountain meadows filled with late-summer wildflowers. The beauty of the Kodiak wilderness was breathtaking, providing a stunning backdrop for what all participants hoped would be another successful hunt. Dr. Chen's monitoring station recorded unprecedented bear activity throughout the morning of August 15th. At least 15 different animals were detected within a 5-mile radius of Silver Creek Lodge, with several large males moving toward the area from different directions. The convergence of so many bears was unlike anything documented in Dr. Chen's research, suggesting that fundamental changes were occurring in the territorial structure of the drainage. Her automated alert system triggered multiple notifications, but Dr. Chen was conducting fieldwork in a different part of the island and would not receive the alerts until late afternoon. The hunting party reached their position overlooking the salmon spawning area at 9:30 in the morning. The view was spectacular, with Silver Creek winding through a broad valley surrounded by mountains that rose nearly 4,000 feet above sea level. The spawning area itself was a series of gravel redds where salmon had cleared areas for depositing their eggs. The clear, cold water revealed hundreds of fish in various stages of the spawning process, creating ideal feeding conditions for brown bears. Hunter's shooting position was carefully selected to provide multiple angles of fire while maintaining concealment from approaching bears. His rifle was a .300 Winchester Magnum, a popular choice for brown bear hunting that offered excellent accuracy with sufficient power for clean kills. Hunter had practiced extensively with this rifle, developing the confidence necessary for hunting dangerous game. The shooting position offered clear shots at ranges from 100 to 300 yards, depending on where bears might appear. The first bear activity of the day occurred at 10:15, when a sow with 2 yearling cubs approached the spawning area from downstream. Bear immediately identified this as a non-hunting situation, as regulations prohibited taking females with offspring, and the presence of cubs would likely deter other bears from approaching. The family group began fishing in the shallows, with the cubs learning techniques that would serve them throughout their lives. The sight was educational and entertaining, providing insights into brown bear behavior and family dynamics. At 11:30, a lone male bear appeared at the edge of the forest, studying the spawning area carefully before approaching. This animal showed the size and characteristics of a mature trophy bear, with Bear estimating its weight at over 1,100 pounds. The bear's cautious approach demonstrated the wariness that had allowed it to survive to maturity in an environment where larger bears posed constant threats. Hunter prepared for a potential shot opportunity while Bear studied the animal through his spotting scope. The bear's approach was interrupted by sounds from the forest that none of the hunting party could identify. The noises were described later as heavy crashing and breaking branches, suggesting the movement of an extremely large animal through dense vegetation. The bear that had been approaching the spawning area immediately retreated, clearly recognizing a superior threat. Bear Morrison felt the first stirrings of unease, as his decades of experience had never included sounds of such magnitude. What emerged from the forest exceeded everyone's expectations and challenged their understanding of brown bear biology. The ghost, moving with surprising silence despite his massive size, approached the spawning area with the confidence of an animal that had never encountered a superior opponent. His size was immediately apparent, dwarfing every other bear that any of the hunting party had ever seen. Bear estimated the animal's weight at over 1,500 pounds, possibly approaching 1,600 pounds, making it the largest brown bear any of them had encountered. The ghost's behavior was unlike that of any bear Morrison had observed in 38 years of guiding. Rather than beginning to fish immediately, the massive animal surveyed the entire area methodically. His intelligence clearly evident in the systematic way he examined potential threats and opportunities. When his gaze fixed on the hunter's concealed position, Bear felt a chill of recognition. The bear had detected their presence, despite their careful concealment and wind-conscious positioning. Hunter's shot opportunity presented itself as the ghost moved into the spawning area, his massive form perfectly broadside at a range of 190 yards. The target was unmistakable, and the shot angle was perfect for precise bullet placement in the vital zone. Hunter controlled his breathing and settled his rifle's crosshairs on the bear's shoulder, just behind the front leg, where the heart and lungs would be most vulnerable to the .300 Winchester Magnum's 180-grain bullet. The shot that Hunter fired at 11:57 on the morning of August 15, 2025, would later be identified by ballistics experts as perfectly placed and delivered with sufficient power to kill any brown bear on Earth. The bullet struck the ghost exactly where Hunter had aimed, penetrating the chest cavity and causing massive internal damage to vital organs. By all accepted standards of brown bear hunting, the shot should have resulted in a quick, clean kill within seconds of impact. Instead, the ghost's reaction defied everything that Bear Morrison thought he knew about wounded bears. Rather than stumbling or showing signs of mortal injury, the massive animal spun toward the hunter's position with a roar that seemed to shake the ground beneath their feet. His charge began immediately, covering the first 50 yards in what seemed like an impossible short time for an animal of his size. Bear shouted for additional shots while reaching for his own rifle, recognizing that they were facing a situation beyond his extensive experience. Calvin and Thomas both fired at the ghost as he closed the distance, their shots accurately placed but seemingly having no effect on the charging bear. The .338 Winchester Magnum and .375 H&H Magnum bullets struck the animal with devastating force, yet the ghost continued his charge with undiminished fury. Bear's backup rifle, a .458 Winchester Magnum loaded with 500-grain solids, added its firepower to the desperate defense. But even these powerful rounds seemed inadequate against the bear's incredible determination. The charge covered the entire 190 yards in less than 10 seconds, with the ghost maintaining his speed despite absorbing multiple hits from some of the most powerful hunting rifles available. His approach was not the blind rush of a wounded animal, but the calculated attack of a predator that had identified threats and was eliminating them with deadly efficiency. The hunter's final shots were fired at point-blank range as the ghost reached their position, his massive paws and teeth capable of inflicting fatal damage with single strikes. Bear Morrison's last radio transmission, made at 12:03 p.m., consisted of a single phrase: "Emergency at Silver Creek Lodge. Send help immediately." The transmission was received by the lodge's base station, where Marcus Wellington was monitoring communications while preparing lunch for the hunting party's expected return. Marcus immediately contacted the Alaska State Troopers and the U.S. Coast Guard, initiating a rescue response that would involve multiple agencies and dozens of personnel. The initial attack lasted approximately 3 minutes, during which the ghost systematically killed all 4 members of the hunting party. His attacks were not random, but targeted, focusing on each individual until they posed no further threat before moving to the next. The bear's behavior during the attack was later described by investigators as methodical and intelligent, displaying a level of tactical thinking rarely associated with animal behavior. The scene that would greet rescue personnel provided evidence of the bear's extraordinary size and the futility of conventional hunting weapons against such a massive predator. Dr. Chen's monitoring station recorded the entire attack through audio sensors, though the visual cameras were not positioned to capture the actual events. The recordings provided investigators with a timeline of the attack and documented the sounds of multiple rifle shots, followed by human screams and the bear's vocalizations. Analysis of the audio files revealed that the attack continued for several minutes after the last rifle shot, suggesting that the ghost had remained in the area to ensure that all threats were eliminated. Marcus Wellington's attempts to contact the hunting party by radio were unsuccessful, with no response to repeated calls beginning at 12:15 p.m. His concern escalated when the party failed to return for lunch at their scheduled 1 o'clock time, as Bear Morrison had never missed a scheduled return in 38 years of guiding. By 2 o'clock, Marcus had contacted the Alaska State Troopers to report an overdue hunting party, initiating search and rescue procedures that would evolve into a massive emergency response. The first aircraft to respond was a helicopter from the Alaska State Troopers, piloted by Sergeant Michael Torres, a veteran pilot with 18 years of search and rescue experience. Torres departed from Kodiak City at 2:30 p.m., arriving over the Silver Creek drainage 27 minutes later. His initial aerial reconnaissance revealed no signs of the hunting party at their last known location, though weather conditions and terrain made ground observation difficult from the aircraft. Torres's second pass over the area at lower altitude revealed what appeared to be equipment scattered in a clearing near the salmon spawning area. The pilot's initial assessment suggested that something had gone seriously wrong, as hunting equipment would never be abandoned in such remote terrain under normal circumstances. His radio transmission to the Alaska State Troopers described the scene as consistent with a serious incident and requested immediate backup from additional aircraft and ground personnel. The Coast Guard response was coordinated from Air Station Kodiak, where a rescue helicopter crew had been placed on standby following Marcus Wellington's initial emergency call. The MH-60 Jayhawk helicopter, crewed by 4 Coast Guard personnel, departed Kodiak at 3:15 p.m., carrying specialized rescue equipment and medical personnel. The aircraft's sophisticated sensors and communication equipment would prove crucial in coordinating the complex rescue operation that was rapidly developing. Bear Morrison's body was discovered at 3:47 p.m. by Sergeant Torres during a low-level reconnaissance pass over the attack site. The veteran guide's remains provided immediate evidence of the catastrophic nature of the incident, with injuries consistent with attack by an extremely large bear. Torres's radio transmission reporting the discovery was matter of fact, but grim. "I have one confirmed fatality at the hunting location, requesting immediate support from wildlife authorities and the medical examiner." The discovery of Thomas Reed's body occurred just minutes later, followed by Calvin Foster and Hunter Lane. All 4 victims showed similar injuries, confirming that they had been killed by the same massive predator. The scene was unlike anything that veteran search and rescue personnel had encountered, with evidence of a bear attack that had overwhelmed 4 experienced hunters, despite their having appropriate firearms and professional guidance. Dr. Chen received the automated alerts from her monitoring station at 4:30 p.m. while conducting fieldwork 30 miles from Silver Creek Lodge. Her immediate recognition of the situation's severity led to an urgent call to the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, providing crucial background information about the unusual bear activity that had been documented in the days leading up to the attack. Her research data would prove essential in understanding how such a catastrophic incident had occurred. The decision to land personnel at the attack site was made by Incident Commander Captain James Walsh of the Alaska State Troopers, despite the obvious risks involved. The massive bear responsible for the deaths remained at large in the immediate area, creating a dangerous situation for rescue personnel. The landing was accomplished using a heavily armed response team equipped with high-powered rifles and trained in dealing with dangerous wildlife encounters. The ground investigation revealed evidence of the ghost's extraordinary size and the violence of his attack. Tracks measured over 15 inches in length, larger than any brown bear tracks in the Alaska Department of Fish and Game's database. Claw marks on nearby trees extended to heights exceeding 12 feet, indicating an animal of unprecedented size. Most disturbing was the evidence suggesting that the bear had remained at the attack site for an extended period after killing the hunting party, behavior that was completely outside normal brown bear patterns. The bear's trail from the attack site led directly towards Silver Creek Lodge, a discovery that prompted immediate evacuation of Marcus Wellington and his staff. The lodge's defensive measures, including electric fencing and bear-proof storage, were designed to deter normal-sized bears, but were clearly inadequate against an animal of the ghost's size and apparent intelligence. The evacuation was completed by helicopter at 6:15 p.m., just as darkness was beginning to settle over the island. The ghost's arrival at Silver Creek Lodge occurred at approximately 7:30 p.m., documented by the lodge's security cameras that had been installed to monitor wildlife activity. The footage, later analyzed by wildlife experts, showed an animal that dwarfed the structure's massive log construction. The bear's investigation of the lodge perimeter was systematic and thorough, demonstrating intelligence and problem-solving abilities that exceeded anything previously documented in brown bear research. The lodge's electric fencing system, designed to deliver a deterrent shock to bears that attempted to breach the perimeter, proved ineffective against the ghost. Security camera footage showed the massive bear testing the fence at multiple points before apparently determining that the electrical charge posed no significant threat. His breach of the perimeter occurred at 7:52 p.m., captured in dramatic detail by cameras that would continue recording until the power supply was severed. The ghost's initial exploration of the lodge grounds focused on the kitchen and food storage areas, consistent with typical bear behavior around human habitation. However, his approach was far more systematic than normal, suggesting an understanding of building layouts and the location of desired resources. The bear's attempts to enter the main lodge building began at 8:15 p.m., initially focusing on doors and windows that had been secured against normal wildlife intrusions. The lodge's construction, while impressive by normal standards, was not designed to withstand assault by a 1,600-pound predator, The Ghost's first successful breach occurred when he simply pushed through the main entrance door, splintering the heavy timber frame and tearing the door from its hinges. Security cameras captured the moment when the massive bear entered the great room, his size making the lodge's supposedly spacious interior appear cramped and inadequate. The destruction that followed was systematic and thorough, suggesting that the Ghost was not simply searching for food, but was engaged in territorial behavior that involved eliminating human presence from his domain. The bear's rampage through the lodge continued for over 2 hours, during which he destroyed furniture, fixtures, and structural elements with methodical determination. The commercial kitchen was completely demolished, with heavy appliances moved or destroyed as if they were toys. The lodge's trophy collection, representing 37 years of successful hunts, was a particular target of the Ghost's fury. The mounted heads and hides of previously harvested bears seemed to trigger aggressive responses, with the massive animals systematically destroying each trophy with apparent deliberation. The destruction of these symbols of human dominance over brown bears carried an almost symbolic significance that would not be lost on wildlife experts who later analyzed the security footage. The structural damage to Silver Creek Lodge exceeded everyone's worst-case scenarios. The Ghost's rampage weakened critical support beams, damaged load-bearing walls, and compromised the building's overall integrity. The lodge's sophisticated heating system was destroyed when the bear damaged propane lines, creating both fire and explosion hazards that would complicate future recovery efforts. Electrical systems were severed in multiple locations, eliminating power and communication capabilities. At 10:45 p.m., the Ghost's destruction of a critical support beam caused a partial collapse of the lodge's great room ceiling. The sound of falling timber and shattering glass was captured by the few security cameras that remained operational, providing dramatic evidence of the building's structural failure. The collapse blocked several exit routes and created debris fields that would make future access dangerous for recovery personnel. The fire that began at 11:30 p.m. was caused by the Ghost's damage to the lodge's propane system, which created a gas leak that was ignited by sparks from damaged electrical equipment. The flames spread rapidly through the lodge's timber construction, fueled by propane and accelerated by the building's open floor plan. Security cameras captured the Ghost's reaction to the fire, showing the massive bear observing the flames before deliberately exiting through a wall that he simply pushed aside. The destruction of Silver Creek Lodge was visible from aircraft 20 miles away, as the fire created a glow that could be seen throughout the Kodiak wilderness. Pilot Jake Sullivan, returning from a supply run to another lodge, reported the fire at 11:57 p.m. and immediately diverted to provide aerial reconnaissance. His radio transmissions described a scene of complete devastation, with the lodge's main structure fully engulfed in flames that were spreading to surrounding forest areas. The fire department response was coordinated from Kodiak City, though the lodge's remote location made direct firefighting efforts impossible. The strategy focused on preventing the fire from spreading to the surrounding forest, which could create a major wildfire threat during the dry conditions that had prevailed throughout the summer. Water drops from aircraft continued throughout the night, though the lodge itself was considered a total loss within hours of the fire's start. Dr. Chen arrived at a Coast Guard facility in Kodiak City at midnight, having been evacuated from her research location as a precautionary measure. Her expertise in brown bear behavior made her an essential resource for understanding the unprecedented events that had unfolded at Silver Creek Lodge. Her preliminary assessment, based on security camera footage and physical evidence, confirmed that the incident involved a bear of extraordinary size and intelligence. The investigation that began on August 16th was led by the Alaska Department of Fish and Game in cooperation with the Alaska State Troopers, the National Park Service, and the University of Alaska Fairbanks. The complexity of the incident required expertise from multiple disciplines, including wildlife biology, forensic investigation, and structural engineering. The team assembled to investigate the Silver Creek Lodge incident represented the most comprehensive response to a human-wildlife conflict in Alaska's history. Recovery of the victims' remains required specialized equipment and procedures due to the dangerous nature of the site and the continued presence of the ghost in the area. The operation was conducted by personnel trained in hazardous environment recovery, working under the protection of armed wildlife officers prepared to deal with the massive bear if he returned. The recovery process provided additional evidence of the violence and systematic nature of the attack. The autopsies performed by the Alaska State Medical Examiner provided detailed information about the nature of the victims' injuries and the sequence of events during the attack. Dr. Patricia Hernandez, the Chief Medical Examiner, had performed autopsies on numerous wildlife attack victims throughout her career, but the injuries documented in the Silver Creek Lodge case exceeded anything in her experience. The forensic evidence confirmed that all 4 victims had been killed by the same massive predator in a coordinated attack. Thomas Reed's autopsy revealed injuries consistent with being struck by an animal possessing extraordinary strength and size. The trauma to his skull and torso indicated impacts from paws that were significantly larger than those of normal brown bears. Dr. Hernandez's report noted that the pattern of injuries suggested a predator that had specifically targeted vital areas with deadly precision, behavior that was highly unusual for brown bear attacks on humans. Calvin Foster's remains showed similar patterns of trauma, with additional evidence suggesting that he had attempted to use his medical training to treat his own injuries before succumbing to the attack. The presence of partially deployed medical supplies near his body indicated that he had maintained consciousness and mobility for a period after the initial attack, providing insights into the timeline and sequence of events during the encounter. Hunter Lane's autopsy revealed that he had continued to fire his rifle even after sustaining mortal injuries, with gunshot residue patterns indicating that he had discharged his weapon at close range in a final defensive effort. The ballistics evidence recovered from the scene confirmed that multiple high-powered rounds had struck the ghost without stopping his attack, raising serious questions about the adequacy of conventional hunting weapons against bears of such extraordinary size. Bear Morrison's injuries were particularly extensive, reflecting his attempts to protect his clients and his greater experience in dealing with dangerous wildlife encounters. The evidence suggested that the veteran guide had engaged the ghost in hand-to-hand combat for several seconds, using a large hunting knife in a desperate attempt to drive off the attacking bear. His sacrifice had provided his clients with precious seconds to fire additional shots, though ultimately none of the defensive measures had proven adequate. The ballistics investigation recovered fragments from at least 15 different bullets that had struck the ghost during the attack, representing hits from 4 different rifles, firing some of the most powerful cartridges available for hunting dangerous game. The fact that these impacts had failed to stop or even significantly slow the bear's attack challenged fundamental assumptions about brown bear hunting and wildlife management protocols. Dr. Chen's analysis of the security camera footage provided unprecedented insights into brown bear intelligence and problem-solving abilities. The ghost's systematic investigation of the lodge perimeter, his apparent understanding of the building's layout, and his targeted destruction of specific items suggested cognitive abilities that exceeded previous scientific understanding of brown bear behavior. Her preliminary report described the incident as a paradigm-shifting event in our understanding of brown bear capabilities. The search for the ghost began immediately after the lodge fire was contained, utilizing tracking dogs, aircraft equipped with thermal imaging equipment, and ground teams armed with tranquilizer weapons designed for large mammals. The massive bear's trail was easily followed from the lodge site, but his movement patterns defied normal brown bear behavior. Rather than retreating to remote areas as expected, the ghost appeared to be patrolling territory that included human habitation areas. The economic impact of the Silver Creek Lodge destruction extended far beyond the immediate property damage. Marcus Wellington's insurance coverage, while comprehensive, did not anticipate the total destruction of the facility by wildlife. The lodge's closure eliminated jobs for 12 full-time employees and disrupted bookings worth over $2 million through the next 3 hunting seasons. The incident also raised questions about insurance coverage for wilderness lodges operating in areas with large predator populations. The media response to the Silver Creek Lodge incident was immediate and intense, with news organizations from around the world sending reporters to Kodiak Island to cover the story. The combination of extreme violence, wealthy victims, and an unprecedented wildlife encounter created a narrative that captivated international attention. Initial reports focused on the human tragedy, but coverage quickly expanded to include questions about wildlife management policies and the safety of hunting in Alaska. The families of the victims faced not only the trauma of sudden loss, but also intense media scrutiny that complicated their grieving process. Thomas Reed's wife, Margaret, a retired schoolteacher from Billings, Montana, became the unofficial spokesperson for the families, calling for improved safety protocols and better understanding of large predator behavior. Her composure during press conferences provided a human face to the tragedy while advocating for changes that might prevent similar incidents. Calvin Foster's family, including his wife Sarah and 2 teenage children, struggled with questions about why such an experienced outdoorsman had been unable to defend himself against the attacking bear. Sarah Foster, herself a nurse practitioner, had supported her husband's hunting passion while always fearing that it might lead to tragedy. Her interviews with media outlets emphasized Calvin's conservation ethics and his respect for wildlife, countering narratives that portrayed hunters as reckless thrill seekers. Hunter Lane's parents, both professors at the University of Washington, faced the additional burden of their son's youth and the unfulfilled promise of his life. Dr. Michael Lane, a computer science professor, and Dr. Janet Lane, who taught environmental science, had initially opposed their son's interest in hunting, but had come to respect his ethical approach to wildlife management. Their advocacy for improved hunter education and safety protocols provided a constructive outlet for their grief. The Alaska Department of Fish and Game faced intense pressure to locate and destroy the ghost, with public safety concerns overriding normal wildlife management protocols. However, the bear's unprecedented size and apparent intelligence made conventional capture or elimination efforts extremely dangerous. The decision was made to assemble a specialized team of wildlife experts, law enforcement officers, and military personnel trained in dealing with dangerous situations. The search for the ghost continued for 6 days before he was located in a remote valley 15 miles from the Silver Creek Lodge site. Thermal imaging from aircraft revealed the massive bear resting in dense forest, apparently uninjured despite absorbing multiple rifle rounds during the attack. The size signature detected by thermal sensors exceeded the calibration limits of the equipment, confirming estimates of the bear's extraordinary dimensions. The elimination of the ghost was accomplished using specialized ammunition fired from aircraft, as ground-based attempts were deemed too dangerous given the bear's demonstrated capabilities. The operation required 3 separate aircraft and over 20 rounds of high-powered ammunition before the massive bear was confirmed dead. Even after death, recovery of the body required heavy machinery transported to the site by helicopter due to the animal's incredible size. The necropsy performed on the ghost's remains provided definitive evidence of his extraordinary nature. The bear weighed 1,637 pounds, making him the largest brown bear ever officially documented. His skull measurements exceeded all existing records by significant margins, qualifying him for listing as a new subspecies if such classifications were based solely on size. The examination also revealed old injuries that suggested previous encounters with human hunters, possibly explaining his aggressive behavior toward people. Most significantly, the necropsy confirmed that the ghost had absorbed at least 19 bullet wounds during the attack at Silver Creek Lodge, including several that should have been immediately fatal. The bear's survival and continued aggression, despite these injuries, demonstrated physical resilience that exceeded scientific understanding of brown bear physiology. Tissue samples were preserved for further study by wildlife biology researchers. Dr. Chen's analysis of the ghost's behavior patterns based on tracking data, security camera footage, and physical evidence revealed a level of intelligence and tactical thinking that challenged fundamental assumptions about brown bear cognition. Her peer-reviewed paper, published 6 months after the incident, described the ghost as demonstrating proto-strategic thinking and territory management behaviors typically associated with higher primates. The legal ramifications of the Silver Creek Lodge incident were complex and unprecedented. While wildlife attacks were generally considered acts of nature that precluded liability claims, the extraordinary circumstances surrounding the ghost's behavior raised questions about whether normal legal standards applied. The victims' families filed wrongful death suits against the lodge, the state of Alaska, and various government agencies, claiming inadequate safety protocols and failure to warn about known dangers. Marcus Wellington's personal losses extended beyond the destruction of his business to include a crisis of confidence in his life's work. The lodge owner, who had dedicated decades to providing safe wilderness experiences, struggled with guilt over the deaths that had occurred under his care. His cooperation with investigators was complete and forthcoming, but the trauma of losing both his business and his clients' lives required extensive psychological counseling. The insurance investigation that followed the Silver Creek Lodge incident resulted in significant changes to policies covering wilderness businesses. The unprecedented nature of the damages, exceeding $800,000 when all factors were included, led insurance companies to reassess risk models for operations in areas with large predator populations. New policies included specific exclusions for attacks by animals exceeding certain size thresholds. The Alaska State Legislature convened special hearings to examine wildlife management policies and public safety protocols in response to the Silver Creek Lodge incident. Testimony from wildlife experts, hunting guides, lodge operators, and victims' families provided a comprehensive review of existing practices and identified areas requiring improvement. The hearings resulted in new regulations requiring enhanced safety equipment and training for hunting guides operating in brown bear habitat. Dr. Chen's research program received emergency funding to expand monitoring efforts throughout brown bear habitat in Alaska. The Silver Creek Lodge incident had demonstrated critical gaps in scientific understanding of large predator behavior and the need for improved early warning systems. Her expanded monitoring network would provide real-time data about bear movements and behavior patterns that could prevent similar tragedies. The recovery and cleanup operation at Silver Creek Lodge continued for 8 months, requiring specialized equipment and personnel trained in hazardous material handling. The site's contamination from damaged propane and heating systems created environmental concerns that complicated remediation efforts. The Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation oversaw the cleanup process, ensuring that the remote wilderness area was restored to its natural condition. The victims' families established the Silver Creek Foundation to promote hunting safety education and wildlife research funding. The Foundation's mission focused on preventing similar tragedies through improved understanding of large predator behavior and enhanced safety protocols for hunters operating in dangerous areas. Initial funding came from life insurance proceeds and donations from hunting organizations worldwide. The psychological impact of the Silver Creek Lodge incident extended beyond the immediate families to include the broader hunting community and wildlife professionals who worked in predator habitat. Many experienced guides and biologists reported increased anxiety and modified behavior patterns when working in areas known to harbor large bears. Professional counseling services were established specifically to help wildlife professionals cope with trauma related to the incident. Marcus Wellington's attempts to rebuild Silver Creek Lodge were ultimately abandoned due to insurance limitations, regulatory changes, and his own psychological trauma from the incident. The site remained undeveloped, gradually returning to its natural state as vegetation reclaimed the cleared areas. Dr. Chen's monitoring station continued to operate, providing ongoing data about wildlife use of the area following the incident. The bear population in the Silver Creek drainage underwent significant changes following the ghost's death, with multiple animals competing to claim the territory he had dominated. Dr. Chen's research documented increased aggressive behavior among male bears and changes in feeding patterns that suggested long-term ecological impacts from the loss of such a dominant individual. The incident had created ripple effects throughout the brown bear population that would require years of study to fully understand. The international scientific community's response to the Silver Creek Lodge incident included renewed interest in studying apex predator behavior and intelligence. Research institutions around the world cited Dr. Chen's documentation of the ghost's capabilities as evidence for the need to reassess assumptions about large carnivore cognition. Funding for brown bear research increased significantly, with particular emphasis on understanding factors that might produce individuals with extraordinary size and intelligence. The hunting industry implemented voluntary safety standards that exceeded government requirements in response to the Silver Creek Lodge incident. Outfitters operating in large predator habitat adopted enhanced communication protocols, improved emergency equipment requirements, and mandatory training programs that address the specific challenges of hunting dangerous game. These changes were driven by both safety concerns and liability considerations. The families of Thomas Reed, Calvin Foster, and Hunter Lane found different ways to honor their loved ones' memories while coping with their tragic losses. Memorial services emphasized the men's passion for wildlife and their commitment to ethical hunting practices. Their deaths were portrayed not as cautionary tales against hunting, but as reminders of the respect that must be accorded to wildlife and wild places. Dr. Chen's continued research in the Silver Creek drainage documented the gradual return of normal bear behavior patterns over the 2 years following the incident. However, her data also revealed permanent changes in how bears in the area responded to human presence, with increased wariness and avoidance behaviors that suggested the population had learned from the ghost's encounter with humans. The incident had created what she termed cultural transmission of human avoidance within the bear population. The site of Silver Creek Lodge became an unofficial memorial to the victims and a reminder of the power of Alaska's wilderness. Hunters and outdoor enthusiasts would occasionally make pilgrimages to the location, leaving flowers or small tokens of remembrance. The Alaska Department of Fish and Game eventually installed a memorial plaque at the site, honoring both the human victims and acknowledging the complex relationship between people and predators in wild places. The story of Silver Creek Lodge and the ghost entered hunting folklore as both cautionary tale and testament to the majesty of Alaska's brown bears. The incident served as a reminder that despite technological advances and human dominance over most environments, There remained wild places where humans were not the apex predator. The 4 men who died at Silver Creek Lodge had understood and accepted these risks, pursuing their passion for hunting with full knowledge that the wilderness could claim their lives. Years later, the Silver Creek Lodge incident continued to influence wildlife management policies, hunting practices, and scientific research into large carnivore behavior. The extraordinary events of August 15th, 2025, had fundamentally changed how humans understood and interacted with one of North America's most formidable predators. The legacy of Thomas Reed, Calvin Foster, Hunter Lane, and Bear Morrison lived on through improved safety protocols and deeper respect for the wild animals they had pursued with such passion. The ruins of Silver Creek Lodge gradually disappeared beneath advancing vegetation, but the memory of what occurred there remained vivid in the minds of all who had been touched by the tragedy. Dr. Chen's research continued to yield insights into brown bear behavior that might prevent similar incidents, while the victims' families worked to ensure that their loved ones' deaths had meaning beyond the immediate tragedy. The wilderness of Kodiak Island continued its eternal cycles, indifferent to human plans and ambitions, but forever changed by the brief intersection of human and bear that had ended in such violence and loss. The ghost's legacy extended beyond his role as the perpetrator of Alaska's deadliest bear attack. His extraordinary size and intelligence had demonstrated the potential for individual animals to exceed all known parameters, challenging scientific understanding and forcing reassessment of wildlife management protocols. The massive bear had lived and died as a creature of the wilderness, following instincts and behaviors that human science was only beginning to understand. In the end, the Silver Creek Lodge incident served as a stark reminder of humanity's place in the natural world. Despite technological advances and apparent dominance over the environment, there remained forces and creatures that could humble human ambitions with swift and terrible efficiency. The 4 men who had traveled to Kodiak Island in pursuit of the ultimate hunting trophy had found instead the ultimate predator, one whose capabilities exceeded their wildest imaginings and whose legacy would outlive them all. The final chapter of the Silver Creek Lodge story was written not in the violence of that August day, but in the years of healing, learning, and remembrance that followed. The incident had changed everyone it touched, from grieving families to wildlife researchers to hunting guides who would never again approach their work with quite the same confidence. The wilderness had reminded them all that it remained, ultimately beyond human control or complete understanding, a realm where ancient powers still held sway and where respect was not just advisable but essential for survival. The next story is the Katmai Encounter. The morning mist clung to Lake Brooks like a shroud, its tendrils reaching across the crystalline water toward the weathered wooden dock where Dr. Sarah Chen stood, adjusting her telephoto lens. At 34, Sarah had spent the better part of a decade photographing wildlife across North America, but Alaska's Katmai National Park held a special magnetism that drew her back year after year. The park's brown bears, some of the largest in the world, congregated here each summer to feast on the salmon runs, creating a spectacle that few places on Earth could match. Sarah's breath formed small clouds in the cool morning air as she checked her camera settings one final time. The Nikon D850 felt familiar and reassuring in her hands, its weight a constant companion through countless expeditions. Behind her, the Brooks Camp Visitor Center was beginning to stir with activity. Early risers preparing for what promised to be an exceptional day of bear viewing. The salmon were running thick this year, and the bears had been responding accordingly. "You're up early again," came a voice from behind her. Sarah turned to see Marcus Rodriguez emerging from the cluster of tents that housed the research team. At 28, Marcus was completing his doctoral thesis on brown bear behavior patterns, and his enthusiasm for the work was infectious. His dark hair was still tousled from sleep, and he carried a steaming cup of coffee that sent wisps of steam into the cold air. "Best light of the day," Sarah replied, gesturing toward the water where the first rays of sunlight were beginning to penetrate the mist. "Besides, you know how quickly things can change out here. I've learned to take advantage of every moment." Marcus nodded, understanding the photographer's dedication. He had been working at Brooks Camp for 3 seasons now, studying the intricate social dynamics of the brown bear population. His research focused on territorial behavior and hierarchy establishment, particularly during the salmon runs, when competition for prime fishing spots reached its peak. The data he had collected over the years painted a complex picture of bear society that challenged many preconceived notions about these magnificent predators. "Any word from the morning patrol?" Sarah asked, referring to the park rangers who conducted early reconnaissance flights to assess bear activity and salmon density. "Jim radioed in about 20 minutes ago," Marcus replied, taking a sip of his coffee. "Heavy concentration along the falls, as expected. He counted at least 15 adults in the immediate vicinity. Says the fishing looks prime." James "Jim" Fletcher was the lead ranger at Brooks Camp, a weathered veteran of 32 years in the National Park Service. At 57, he had witnessed more bear encounters than perhaps any other person alive, and his judgment regarding bear behavior was considered nearly infallible among his peers. Jim's experience extended beyond simple observation. He had been involved in numerous rescue operations, wildlife management decisions, and visitor safety protocols that had shaped the way Katmai operated. The sound of approaching footsteps on the wooden boardwalk announced the arrival of Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, the camp's wildlife biologist and Marcus's thesis advisor. At 42, Dr. Morrison commanded respect throughout the scientific community for her groundbreaking research on ursine behavior patterns. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her field clothes bore the signs of countless expeditions into bear country. "Morning briefing in 5 minutes," she announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "Weather Service is calling for clear skies through noon, then possible thunderstorms moving in from the west. We'll want to be positioned early if we're going to make the most of it." Sarah nodded, checking her equipment bag one final time. In addition to her primary camera, she carried 2 backup bodies, an assortment of lenses ranging from wide angle to super telephoto, extra batteries, memory cards, and emergency communication equipment. The bag also contained bear spray, though she hoped never to need it. Her philosophy had always been to maintain proper distance and respect for the wildlife she photographed. The group made their way toward the visitor center, where other team members were beginning to gather. Among them was Robert "Bobby" Williams, a 25-year-old park technician whose enthusiasm for his work was matched only by his relative inexperience. Bobby had been at Brooks Camp for only 6 weeks, having transferred from a desk job in Anchorage. His urban background provided an interesting contrast to the wilderness veterans around him, and his fresh perspective often led to insightful observations that the more experienced staff might overlook. Also joining the morning briefing was Catherine "Cat" Brennan, a 40-year-old emergency medical technician whose presence at the remote camp was mandated by Park Service regulations. Cat had served 2 tours in Afghanistan as a combat medic before transitioning to civilian emergency services, and her calm demeanor under pressure had already proven invaluable during her 2-month assignment at Brooks Camp. Her medical kit was comprehensive, designed to handle everything from minor cuts and bruises to major trauma situations that might arise in a location several hours away from the nearest hospital. The final member of their group was Dr. David Park, a 36-year-old behavioral psychologist from the University of Washington who was conducting research on human-wildlife interaction stress responses. His work focused on understanding how proximity to large predators affected human psychology and decision-making processes, and Katmai provided an ideal laboratory for his studies. Dr. Park's presence served a dual purpose, as his expertise in stress management and crisis psychology made him an invaluable asset for visitor safety protocols. Inside the visitor center, Ranger Fletcher spread a detailed topographical map across the large wooden table that dominated the briefing room. The map showed the entire Brooks River drainage, with specific notations indicating recent bear sightings, salmon concentration areas, and visitor access points. Red pins marked locations where bears had been observed exhibiting territorial behavior, while blue pins indicated optimal viewing positions for photographers and researchers. "Current conditions look excellent," Fletcher began, his weathered finger tracing along the river. "Salmon counts are running about 20% above normal for this time of year, which means the bears are active and predictable in their patterns. We've got Big Red holding his usual position at the primary falls, with Scarface maintaining territory about 200 yards downstream. Big Red was a massive male brown bear, estimated to weigh over 1,200 pounds, who had dominated the prime fishing spots at Brooks Falls for the past 4 years. His distinctive reddish-brown coat and imposing presence made him instantly recognizable to researchers and visitors alike. Scarface, named for a distinctive facial marking from an old injury, was slightly smaller, but equally formidable, and the tension between these two dominant males created dramatic dynamics that fascinated both scientists and photographers. "Weather window looks good until early afternoon," Fletcher continued. "Barometric pressure is holding steady. Wind is light from the southeast. Visibility should be excellent for photography and observation. However, I want everyone to remember that we're dealing with wild animals in their natural habitat. These bears are tolerant of human presence, but they are not tame. Maintain minimum distances at all times, stay alert for behavioral changes, and trust your instincts." Dr. Morrison leaned forward, adding her scientific perspective to the briefing. "We're entering peak salmon season, which means competition among the bears will intensify. Watch for signs of increased aggression or territorial displays. The dominant males will be more assertive about protecting their fishing spots, and younger bears may take more risks as they attempt to secure feeding opportunities." Sarah adjusted her camera strap, already mentally composing the shots she hoped to capture. The interplay between the massive predators and their salmon prey created endless photographic opportunities, but she knew that patience and respect for the animal's space would be essential for both safety and success. "What about the weather forecast?" Dr. Park asked, glancing toward the windows where the morning mist was beginning to lift. "Current conditions are stable," Fletcher replied, "but we're monitoring a low-pressure system moving in from the Gulf of Alaska. If it develops as predicted, we could see significant weather changes by mid-afternoon. Heavy rain, possible hail, and definitely reduced visibility. If conditions deteriorate, we'll implement weather protocols and move everyone back to base camp." The group spent another 20 minutes reviewing safety procedures, communication protocols, and research objectives for the day. Each team member had specific responsibilities and backup roles in case of emergency situations. Sarah would focus on photography while serving as a secondary observer for behavioral documentation. Marcus would conduct his primary behavioral research while maintaining radio contact with base camp. Dr. Morrison would oversee the scientific aspects of the operation, while Dr. Park monitored the group's psychological state and stress levels. Kat Brennan reviewed her medical protocols, ensuring that everyone understood the evacuation procedures in case of injury. The nearest hospital was in Anchorage, requiring either a lengthy boat and vehicle journey or helicopter evacuation, depending on weather conditions. Her medical kit included trauma supplies, pain medication, antibiotics, and emergency communication equipment that could reach rescue services anywhere in Alaska. As the briefing concluded, the team began final preparations for their departure to the observation sites. The morning sun had fully emerged, burning away the last of the mist and revealing the pristine wilderness that surrounded Brooks Camp. The river ran clear and cold, its surface occasionally broken by the silver flash of salmon making their way upstream to spawn. Sarah double-checked her camera batteries and memory cards, knowing that once they reached the remote observation positions, there would be no opportunity to return for forgotten equipment. Her telephoto lens was cleaned and properly calibrated, and she carried backup equipment for every critical component. The weight of her pack was substantial, but she had learned through experience that redundancy was essential in wilderness photography. Marcus gathered his behavioral observation sheets, binoculars, and laptop computer for real-time data entry. His research methodology required precise timing and detailed notation of bear interactions, feeding patterns, and territorial displays. The data he collected would contribute to the broader understanding of brown bear social dynamics and potentially influence future park management decisions. The team departed Brooks Camp at 8:15 a.m., following the elevated boardwalk that led toward the primary observation areas. The wooden pathway had been constructed to minimize human impact on the ecosystem while providing safe access for researchers and visitors. Below them, the forest floor showed signs of frequent bear activity, claw marks on trees, well-worn trails, and the occasional overturned log where bears had searched for insects or small mammals. Their destination was Platform 3, an elevated observation deck positioned approximately 150 yards from the main falls, where the largest concentrations of bears typically gathered. The platform had been designed by engineers to withstand the harsh Alaskan weather while providing unobstructed views of the primary bear activity areas. Safety features included emergency communication equipment, bear-proof storage containers, and multiple escape routes in case of unexpected wildlife encounters. The 30-minute walk to Platform 3 took them through some of the most pristine wilderness remaining in North America. Towering Sitka spruces created a canopy overhead, while the understory revealed an intricate ecosystem of berry bushes, ferns, and wildflowers. The trail itself showed evidence of the area's true inhabitants: fresh bear tracks in the soft earth, salmon bones scattered along the riverbank, and the occasional scat pile that provided valuable data about bear diet and health. As they approached the platform, the sound of rushing water grew louder, and the first glimpses of bear activity became visible through the trees. Sarah immediately began photographing, capturing the interplay of light and shadow on the water, the massive forms of brown bears moving with surprising grace along the riverbank, and the silver flashes of salmon attempting to navigate the falls. Platform 3 offered an ideal vantage point for both photography and behavioral observation. The elevated position provided safety while allowing for unobstructed views of the primary bear congregation areas. Sarah began setting up her equipment, mounting her longest telephoto lens on a sturdy tripod, while keeping her shorter lenses readily accessible for varying shot compositions. Marcus positioned himself at the platform's eastern edge, where his angle provided optimal viewing of bear interactions and territorial displays. His laptop was protected in a weatherproof case, and he began immediately documenting the bears present at the site. Through his binoculars, he could identify several familiar individuals, each with distinctive markings or behavioral patterns that made them recognizable to the research team. Big Red dominated the prime fishing spot at the base of the falls, his massive frame positioned perfectly to intercept salmon attempting to leap upstream. His fishing technique was methodical and efficient, representing years of experience and physical dominance that allowed him to maintain his preferred territory. Occasionally, younger males would approach his area, but a simple display of size and aggression was usually sufficient to maintain his exclusivity. Approximately 50 yards downstream, Scarface had established his secondary territory, a location that provided good fishing opportunities while avoiding direct confrontation with the larger Big Red. The dynamic between these two dominant males fascinated Marcus, as it demonstrated the complex social hierarchies that governed bear society during the salmon runs. Dr. Morrison positioned herself at the platform's center, where she could observe the overall bear population dynamics while maintaining communication with base camp. Her years of experience allowed her to quickly assess the behavioral state of the bear congregation, identifying potential stress indicators or unusual patterns that might require intervention or closer monitoring. Sarah began photographing immediately, capturing the bears in their natural fishing behaviors. Through her telephoto lens, she could observe details invisible to the naked eye. The precision with which the bears calculated their strikes, the intricate play of muscles beneath their thick fur, and the intense concentration evident in their expressions as they focused on the salmon runs. The morning progressed smoothly, with the bear population exhibiting normal feeding and territorial behaviors. The salmon run was particularly strong, providing abundant opportunities for successful fishing and reducing competition-related stress among the bears. Sarah captured hundreds of images, documenting everything from dramatic fishing strikes to quiet moments of bears resting between feeding sessions. Marcus collected detailed behavioral data, noting interaction patterns, feeding success rates, and territorial maintenance activities. His observations confirmed many of his previous hypotheses about bear social dynamics while revealing new nuances in their behavior patterns. The presence of adequate food resources clearly reduced aggressive interactions, allowing for a more complex social structure to emerge. At approximately 10:30 a.m., the team noticed a change in the atmospheric conditions. The clear morning sky was beginning to show signs of the approaching weather system, with high cirrus clouds streaming in from the west. The barometric pressure was dropping, and Dr. Park noted increased restlessness among both the bears and the human observers. "Weather's starting to move in faster than predicted," Dr. Morrison observed, glancing at her portable weather monitor. "We should be prepared to evacuate if conditions deteriorate rapidly." Fletcher's voice crackled over the radio, confirming the accelerated weather timeline. "Base camp to Platform 3. We're seeing the leading edge of that storm system moving faster than forecast. Current ETA for significant weather is now 12:30 p.m. Recommend you monitor conditions closely and be prepared for early extraction." The team acknowledged the update while continuing their work, knowing that weather changes in Alaska could occur with remarkable speed. Sarah increased her shooting pace, wanting to capture as much material as possible before conditions forced their withdrawal. The changing light created dramatic photographic opportunities, with the approaching storm clouds providing a stark backdrop for the bear activity. As the morning progressed toward noon, the bear population at the falls began to increase. Additional individuals arrived to take advantage of the excellent fishing conditions, creating a more complex social dynamic as territorial boundaries were tested and established. Marcus documented the arrival of each new bear, noting their size, apparent age, distinctive markings, and behavioral patterns. Among the new arrivals was a large female with 2 yearling cubs, a family group that immediately commanded respect from the other bears present. The protective instincts of mother bears were legendary, and all other bears gave the family unit a wide berth. Sarah was thrilled to photograph the cubs, whose playful antics provided a lighter counterpoint to the serious business of salmon fishing that dominated adult bear behavior. The female, whom the research team had designated as Mama Bear due to her consistent success in raising cubs, positioned her family approximately 100 yards upstream from the main congregation. This location provided access to salmon while maintaining distance from the larger, potentially dangerous males. Her cubs, estimated to be about 18 months old, showed remarkable fishing skills for their age, though they still relied heavily on their mother's catches. Dr. Park monitored the group's stress levels as the bear population density increased, noting the subtle psychological effects of prolonged exposure to large predators. Even experienced researchers could experience elevated stress responses when surrounded by animals capable of inflicting serious injury, and his presence helped ensure that human psychological factors didn't compromise safety protocols. At 11:45 a.m., the team observed an unusual behavioral pattern among the bears. Several individuals began showing signs of agitation, looking frequently toward the forest beyond the river rather than focusing on the salmon runs. Marcus noted the change immediately, recognizing it as a potential indicator of external stress factors. "Something's got their attention," Marcus observed, raising his binoculars to scan the tree line beyond the river. "This isn't normal feeding behavior. They're definitely responding to something we can't see." Dr. Morrison confirmed Marcus's observation, her years of experience allowing her to quickly recognize the shift in bear behavior. Alert postures, reduced feeding activity, frequent scanning toward the northeast quadrant could be another bear approaching, or possibly aircraft activity. Sarah continued photographing, but she also began documenting the behavioral change that was rippling through the bear population. Through her telephoto lens, she could see the tension in their body language, the way their ears were positioned, and the increased frequency of their scanning behavior. The radio crackled with Fletcher's voice. "Platform 3, we've got aircraft activity in your area. Fish and Wildlife Service helicopter conducting a routine survey. Should pass through your airspace in approximately 10 minutes. The bears may react to the engine noise." The explanation for the unusual behavior provided some relief, but the team remained vigilant. Aircraft could trigger unpredictable responses in wildlife, and even routine flyovers occasionally resulted in scattered bear populations or increased aggressive behavior. As predicted, the helicopter appeared from the northeast approximately 8 minutes later, flying at an altitude designed to minimize disturbance while allowing for population counts and health assessments. The aircraft's presence immediately triggered responses throughout the bear population, with most individuals moving away from the exposed fishing areas toward the cover of the surrounding forest. Big Red, however, maintained his position at the falls, his confidence and territorial dominance overriding his natural wariness of the mechanical intruder. His behavior provided an excellent example of how individual personality traits influenced wildlife responses to human activity, and Marcus documented the interaction extensively. Sarah captured dramatic images of the bears reacting to the helicopter, their alert postures and scanning behaviors creating powerful photographic compositions. The contrast between the wild animals and the mechanical presence overhead illustrated the complex relationship between human activity and wildlife behavior in protected areas. The helicopter completed its survey pass and disappeared toward the south, allowing the bear population to gradually return to normal feeding activities. However, the disruption had changed the social dynamics at the falls, with several bears relocating to new positions and others choosing to remain in the forest until the situation fully stabilized. By 12:15 p.m., the approaching weather system was becoming increasingly apparent. The western sky showed dark clouds building on the horizon, and the wind had begun to increase, creating small whitecaps on the previously calm surface of Brooks Lake. The barometric pressure continued to drop, and sensitive individuals in both the human and bear populations were showing signs of weather-related stress. "Time to start thinking about extraction," Dr. Morrison announced, checking her weather monitoring equipment. "Current conditions are still acceptable, but that's going to change rapidly once the front arrives." Fletcher's voice confirmed the assessment over the radio. "Platform 3. Recommend you begin shutdown procedures. We're seeing wind gusts up to 35 knots at the lake surface, and radar shows heavy precipitation approaching from the west. ETA for significant weather impact is now 12:45 p.m. The team began securing their equipment and preparing for the return journey to base camp. Sarah carefully packed her cameras and lenses, ensuring that each piece was properly protected against the anticipated weather. Marcus saved his data files and secured his laptop, while Dr. Morrison completed her final behavioral observations for the session. As they prepared to depart Platform 3, Kat Brennan conducted a final safety check, ensuring that all team members were accounted for and that emergency equipment was properly secured. The return journey would take approximately 30 minutes under normal conditions, but the approaching weather could significantly impact their travel time. At 12:25 p.m., the team departed Platform 3 for the return journey to Brooks Camp. The atmospheric conditions had continued to deteriorate, with increasing wind and the first scattered drops of rain beginning to fall. The forest around them showed signs of the approaching storm, with trees beginning to sway and wildlife seeking shelter. The elevated boardwalk provided safe passage above the forest floor, but the increasing wind made footing occasionally treacherous. Safety protocols required the team to maintain constant communication and to move in single file, with the most experienced member leading and another bringing up the rear. Sarah documented their return journey, capturing images of the changing weather conditions and their impact on the surrounding ecosystem. The dramatic lighting created by the approaching storm provided excellent photographic opportunities, though the increasing wind made camera stability challenging. Halfway back to base camp, the team encountered an unexpected situation that would forever change their perspective on wildlife safety protocols. As they rounded a bend in the boardwalk approximately 200 yards from Brooks Camp, Dr. Morrison suddenly raised her hand in the universal signal for immediate stop. "Everyone freeze," she whispered urgently. "Large male ahead, blocking the path." Through the trees, approximately 50 yards ahead, a massive brown bear was positioned directly on the boardwalk. The animal was facing away from them, apparently investigating something that had captured his attention, but his position effectively blocked their only route back to base camp. Marcus immediately recognized the individual. It was Bruno, a large male bear known for his unpredictable behavior and tendency to investigate human activity areas. Bruno was estimated to weigh over 1,000 pounds and had been involved in several previous incidents where he had approached too closely to human facilities. "Options," Dr. Morrison whispered, her voice barely audible above the increasing wind. Fletcher's voice crackled through their radios, indicating that base camp was monitoring their situation. "Platform 3 team, we have you on visual from the tower. Confirm you have stopped due to bear on boardwalk." "Confirmed," Dr. Morrison responded quietly. "Large male, approximately 50 yards ahead, blocking our route. Requesting guidance." The standard protocol for such situations was to wait for the bear to move on voluntarily, avoiding any actions that might be interpreted as threatening or challenging. However, the approaching weather complicated their situation significantly, as they could not remain exposed on the boardwalk indefinitely. Bruno continued his investigation of whatever had attracted his attention, occasionally looking up to scan his surroundings, but showing no immediate awareness of the human presence behind him. His body language suggested curiosity rather than aggression, but with brown bears, situations could change rapidly, and without warning. Sarah instinctively began photographing the encounter, her camera set to silent mode to avoid creating any sounds that might attract the bear's attention. Through her telephoto lens, she could observe Bruno's behavior in detail, noting the way he used his nose to investigate scents and his careful, methodical approach to examining his surroundings. The wind continued to increase, and the first substantial raindrops began to fall, creating additional stress factors for both the humans and the bear. Weather changes could make wildlife more unpredictable, as their normal behavioral patterns were disrupted by environmental pressures. Storms intensifying faster than predicted, Fletcher's voice reported through the radio. You need to reach base camp within the next 15 minutes to avoid being caught in severe weather. Dr. Morrison weighed their options carefully. Standard protocol dictated waiting for the bear to move on naturally, but the approaching storm created a time-critical situation that complicated their decision-making process. The team's safety depended on reaching shelter before the full force of the weather system arrived. We're going to try to back away slowly and take the alternate route through the forest, Dr. Morrison decided. It's longer and more difficult, but it avoids direct confrontation. The alternate route was a poorly maintained trail that paralleled the main boardwalk approximately 100 yards to the south. It would add at least 20 minutes to their journey and require traversing more challenging terrain, but it offered their best option for avoiding the bear while still reaching base camp before the storm arrived. Kat Brennan moved to the rear of the group, her medical training and emergency experience making her the logical choice to monitor their back trail for any signs of wildlife following their movement. Dr. Park positioned himself in the middle of the group, where he could provide psychological support to any team member showing signs of stress-related decision-making problems. The team began their careful retreat from the boardwalk, moving slowly and quietly to avoid attracting Bruno's attention. The forest floor was uneven and partially obscured by undergrowth, making their movement more challenging than the smooth boardwalk surface they had been following. As they moved through the trees, Sarah continued to document their experience, capturing images of the team's careful movement through the wilderness and the increasing intensity of the approaching storm. The dramatic lighting and environmental conditions created powerful photographic opportunities, though the circumstances made composition and camera stability extremely challenging. Marcus used his knowledge of bear behavior to guide their movement, selecting routes that minimized the likelihood of accidentally encountering other bears that might be seeking shelter from the approaching weather. His understanding of territorial patterns and denning preferences helped the team avoid areas where bears might be concentrated. The alternate trail proved more challenging than anticipated, with fallen logs, dense undergrowth, and marshy areas that slowed their progress significantly. The increasing rain made the terrain slippery and reduced visibility, compounding the difficulties of their off-trail movement. 20 minutes into their detour, Dr. Morrison called for a brief rest stop to assess their progress and confirm their position relative to base camp. GPS readings indicated they were approximately 300 yards from their destination, but the remaining terrain included a steep slope and a creek crossing that would require careful navigation. Weather update, Fletcher's voice crackled through increasing radio static. Storm has intensified to severe thunderstorm warnings. Immediate evacuation to indoor shelter required. ETA to base camp, approximately 15 minutes if conditions hold, Dr. Morrison responded. We're encountering more difficult terrain than anticipated. The team resumed their movement with increased urgency, knowing that their safety margin was rapidly diminishing. The rain had intensified to a steady downpour, and the first rumbles of thunder could be heard in the distance. Lightning strikes in the wilderness pose serious risks, particularly for individuals carrying metal equipment or moving through exposed areas. As they descended the slope toward the final creek crossing, Kat Brennan noticed that Dr. Park was showing signs of stress-induced fatigue and mild disorientation. The psychological pressure of the bear encounter combined with the physical demands of off-trail movement were beginning to affect his performance. "David, how are you doing?" Kat asked, positioning herself beside him as they navigated a particularly challenging section of terrain. "I'm okay, Doctor," Park replied, though his breathing was labored and his movement showed signs of decreased coordination. "Just need to focus on getting to base camp." Kat made a mental note to monitor Doctor Park more closely during the remainder of their journey, recognizing that stress-related performance degradation could lead to injuries or poor decision-making that might compromise the entire team's safety. The creek crossing proved less challenging than anticipated, as recent dry weather had reduced the water level to a manageable depth. However, the increasing rain was beginning to raise the water level, and they could see that conditions would deteriorate rapidly if their return had been delayed any longer. As they emerged from the forest and approached the final stretch to base camp, the team could see the lights of the visitor center through the trees. The familiar buildings provided a welcome sight after their challenging detour through the wilderness, and the promise of warm, dry shelter motivated them through the final phase of their journey. At 1:35 p.m., the team reached the safety of the visitor center just as the storm reached its full intensity. Lightning illuminated the darkened sky, and torrential rain drummed against the building's metal roof. Their timing had been critical. Remaining in the wilderness even 10 minutes longer would have exposed them to dangerous weather conditions. Fletcher greeted them at the entrance, helping to secure their equipment and conducting a quick head count to ensure that all team members had returned safely. The successful evacuation represented a textbook example of how proper planning, clear communication, and flexible decision-making could prevent a potentially dangerous situation from escalating into an emergency. Inside the visitor center, the team began the process of drying and securing their equipment while conducting an informal debriefing session about their morning's experiences. Sarah's photographs would provide valuable documentation of both the wildlife behavior and the weather event, while Marcus's data would contribute to ongoing research about bear responses to environmental changes. Dr. Morrison contacted Park headquarters to file a formal report about the Bruno encounter, providing details that would be incorporated into future safety protocols and visitor briefings. The incident highlighted the importance of maintaining flexibility in safety procedures and the value of having multiple evacuation routes available. As the afternoon progressed, the storm system proved to be more severe than initially predicted, with sustained winds exceeding 50 knots and hail up to golf ball size. The team's early evacuation had prevented them from being caught in conditions that could have resulted in serious injuries or required emergency rescue operations. Kat Brennan used the downtime to conduct medical checks on all team members, ensuring that the physical and psychological stresses of their morning hadn't resulted in any health issues requiring attention. Dr. Park's stress symptoms had resolved once they reached safety, confirming that his earlier difficulties had been situational rather than indicative of any underlying medical problems. The storm continued through the afternoon, effectively ending any possibility of returning to the field that day. However, the team used the time productively, analyzing the morning's data, processing photographs, and updating research databases with their observations. Sarah's photographs revealed details about bear behavior that hadn't been apparent during real-time observation, including subtle body language cues and interaction patterns that would contribute to ongoing behavioral research. Her documentation of the storm's approach and the team's evacuation would also serve as valuable training material for future safety protocols. Marcus analyzed his behavioral data in conjunction with previous observations, identifying patterns in bear responses to weather changes that might predict future behavior during similar conditions. His research suggested that bears might have more sophisticated weather prediction abilities than previously understood, potentially allowing them to prepare for severe conditions hours before human weather monitoring systems detected significant changes. As evening approached and the storm began to subside, Fletcher conducted a comprehensive briefing session that analyzed the day's events from multiple perspectives. The successful management of both the bear encounter and the weather emergency provided valuable lessons that would improve future operations at Brooks Camp. Today's events demonstrate why we maintain strict safety protocols and require redundant planning for all field operations, Fletcher explained to the assembled team. Your professional response to changing conditions prevented what could have been a much more serious situation. Dr. Morrison added scientific perspective to the debriefing, emphasizing how the day's observations had contributed to understanding of bear behavior patterns and environmental response mechanisms. The data we collected today, under challenging conditions, will help us better predict and manage similar situations in the future. The evening meal provided an opportunity for the team to decompress and process their experiences in a more relaxed setting. Conversations ranged from technical discussions about equipment performance to philosophical reflections on the relationship between humans and wildlife in protected natural areas. As night fell over Brooks Camp, the team prepared for the following day's activities, knowing that their morning's experiences had provided valuable insights that would influence their future approaches to wildlife research and photography. The combination of successful scientific observation, dramatic photography, and effective emergency management had created a day that would be remembered throughout their careers. Sarah spent the evening processing her photographs, selecting the best images for inclusion in her ongoing documentation project about Alaska's brown bears. The dramatic lighting conditions created by the approaching storm had provided exceptional photographic opportunities, and her documentation of the bear encounter would serve as valuable educational material. Marcus continued his data analysis, incorporating the day's observations into his larger research database. The behavioral patterns he had documented, particularly the bear's responses to weather changes and aircraft activity, would contribute significantly to understanding of brown bear psychology and environmental adaptation mechanisms. Dr. Morrison completed her official reports for park headquarters, providing detailed accounts of both the wildlife observations and the emergency procedures that had been implemented. Her documentation would contribute to ongoing assessments of safety protocols and visitor management procedures at Brooks Camp. The following morning dawned clear and calm, with no traces of the previous day's severe weather except for scattered debris and higher water levels in the streams and lake. The bear population had returned to normal activities, with familiar individuals resuming their established territorial patterns around the prime fishing areas. During the morning briefing, Fletcher announced that conditions were excellent for a return to field operations, with stable weather predicted for the entire day. The team's equipment had suffered no damage from the previous day's storm, and all personnel were ready to resume their research and photography activities. Sarah prepared her cameras with renewed enthusiasm, knowing that the clear atmospheric conditions would provide excellent lighting for photography. Her experience with the previous day's challenging conditions had reinforced her confidence in her equipment and techniques, and she looked forward to documenting the bear's return to normal behavioral patterns. Marcus reviewed his research objectives for the day, planning to focus on post-storm behavioral adaptations and territorial re-establishment patterns. His hypothesis suggested that severe weather events might temporarily disrupt bear social hierarchies, leading to interesting dynamics as individuals reasserted their positions within the community. The team departed for Platform 3 at 8 a.m., following the same route they had taken the previous day. The boardwalk showed evidence of the storm's intensity, with scattered branches and debris that had been cleared by the overnight maintenance crew. The forest around them appeared refreshed and vibrant, with the previous day's rain having washed the vegetation clean. As they approached Platform 3, early observations confirmed that the bear population had indeed returned to normal activities. Big Red was already positioned at his preferred fishing spot, while Scarface had resumed his downstream territory. The social dynamics appeared unchanged from pre-storm patterns, suggesting remarkable resilience in bear behavioral systems. The morning's observations proceeded smoothly, with excellent fishing conditions creating abundant opportunities for successful bear photography and behavioral documentation. Sarah captured images that demonstrated the bear's remarkable adaptation to changing environmental conditions, while Marcus documented the rapid re-establishment of territorial boundaries and social hierarchies. At approximately 10:30 a.m., the team observed the arrival of a new individual, a large male bear they had not previously encountered. The newcomer's size and confident demeanor suggested he was an experienced adult, possibly from a neighboring territory who had been displaced by the previous day's storm or was taking advantage of the excellent fishing conditions. Marcus immediately began documenting the social dynamics created by the newcomer's presence, noting how established territorial holders responded to the potential challenge to their positions. The interactions provided fascinating insights into bear communication and conflict resolution mechanisms. The new male, whom the team designated as Newcomer, approached the fishing areas cautiously but confidently, testing the responses of the established bears through careful body language and positioning. His behavior suggested experience with similar territorial negotiations, and his size indicated he could potentially challenge even the dominant males for prime fishing locations. Big Red's response to Newcomer's presence was immediate and decisive. The massive dominant male abandoned his fishing activity and moved to intercept the approaching challenger, his body language clearly communicating territorial ownership and willingness to defend his position. Sarah captured the confrontation through her telephoto lens, documenting the subtle but crucial communication signals that passed between the two bears. The interaction demonstrated the complex social protocols that governed bear behavior and prevented most conflicts from escalating to physical confrontation. The standoff between Big Red and Newcomer lasted approximately 15 minutes, during which both bears engaged in elaborate displays of size, strength, and determination. Neither bear showed signs of backing down, creating a tense situation that held the entire bear population's attention. Marcus documented every aspect of the confrontation, recognizing it as a potentially significant event that could reshape the territorial dynamics at Brooks Falls. His data would contribute to understanding of how bear social hierarchies adapt to environmental changes and population pressures. The confrontation was ultimately resolved when Newcomer voluntarily withdrew to a fishing position downstream from Big Red's territory, apparently concluding that the potential benefits of challenging the established hierarchy did not justify the risks involved. Big Red's dominance remained intact, but the incident had demonstrated that his position was not unassailable. Following the territorial resolution, the bear population quickly returned to normal fishing activities, though the tension created by the confrontation remained evident in their continued vigilance and positioning. Sarah continued photographing, capturing images that documented both the immediate aftermath of the conflict and the gradual return to routine behaviors. The morning's observations concluded at 11:45 a.m. without further incidents, providing the team with valuable data about post-storm behavioral adaptations and territorial dynamics. The combination of excellent weather conditions and dramatic wildlife interactions had created an ideal research and photography session. As the team prepared to return to base camp, Dr. Morrison conducted a final assessment of the bear population, noting the successful re-establishment of territorial boundaries and the integration of the newcomer into the existing social structure. Her observations would contribute to ongoing research about brown bear adaptability and resilience. The return journey to Brooks Camp proceeded without incident, allowing the team to reflect on their successful morning and plan for future research activities. The previous day's challenging experiences had prepared them for effective responses to unexpected situations, while the current day's smooth operations demonstrated the value of proper planning and flexible protocols. Back at base camp, the team began processing their data and photographs, analyzing the morning's observations in the context of their broader research objectives. Sarah's images provided dramatic documentation of bear territorial behavior, while Marcus's data revealed important patterns in post-storm social dynamics. Dr. Morrison contacted park headquarters to provide updates on bear population status and behavioral patterns, contributing to the broader understanding of wildlife management needs in the Katmai ecosystem. Her reports would influence future visitor safety protocols and research planning activities. The afternoon was spent in data analysis and equipment maintenance, preparing for continued research activities throughout the remainder of the team's assignment at Brooks Camp. The combination of challenging and routine experiences had provided comprehensive insights into both bear behavior and effective research methodologies. As evening approached, the team gathered for their daily debriefing session, discussing the morning's observations and their implications for ongoing research projects. The successful documentation of territorial dynamics and social adaptations had provided valuable contributions to scientific understanding of brown bear behavior. Fletcher provided updates on weather forecasts and park activities, confirming that conditions would remain favorable for continued field operations. The stability of environmental conditions would allow for consistent observation and data collection throughout the following week. Sarah spent the evening processing her photographs, selecting images that best captured the drama and complexity of bear social interactions. Her documentation would serve both scientific and educational purposes, helping to communicate the sophisticated behavioral patterns exhibited by Alaska's brown bears. Marcus continued his data analysis, comparing the day's observations with previous research to identify patterns and trends in bear social dynamics. His findings suggested that territorial hierarchies were more flexible and adaptive than previously understood, with environmental factors playing a significant role in shaping social structures. Dr. Morrison completed her research documentation, incorporating the day's findings into her broader study of brown bear population dynamics in the Katmai ecosystem. Her work would contribute to long-term conservation planning and wildlife management strategies for the region. The evening meal provided an opportunity for team members to share their perspectives on the day's experiences and discuss plans for future research activities. Conversations ranged from technical aspects of data collection to philosophical reflections on human-wildlife relationships in protected natural areas. As the team prepared for sleep, they reflected on the successful completion of another day of research in one of North America's most pristine wilderness areas. Their work was contributing to scientific understanding while providing valuable insights for conservation and wildlife management efforts. The night passed quietly, with only the natural sounds of the wilderness surrounding Brooks Camp. The bear population continued their nocturnal activities, with occasional glimpses of individuals moving along the riverbank in search of salmon or investigating new territorial opportunities. Dawn brought another clear day with excellent conditions for continued research and photography. The team's equipment was ready, Their objectives were clearly defined, and their enthusiasm for the work remained high despite the previous day's challenges and successes. During the morning briefing, Fletcher announced that satellite imagery showed stable weather patterns for the entire week, providing ideal conditions for comprehensive data collection and behavioral observation. The predictable environment would allow for systematic research protocols and consistent documentation procedures. Sarah prepared her photography equipment with careful attention to the lessons learned from previous days' experiences. Her camera settings were optimized for the current lighting conditions, and her lens selections were based on anticipated bear behavior patterns and positioning opportunities. Marcus reviewed his research protocols, planning to focus on long-term behavioral tracking and individual identification techniques. His methodology required consistent observation of specific bears over extended periods, and the stable weather conditions would facilitate this comprehensive approach. Dr. Morrison outlined the day's scientific objectives, emphasizing the importance of systematic data collection and careful documentation of all observed behaviors. Her experience guided the team's approach to maximizing the value of their research opportunities while maintaining safety protocols. The team departed for their observation positions at 7:45 a.m., following established routes and communication procedures. Their destination was an expanded observation area that would allow for comprehensive monitoring of bear populations across multiple fishing locations and territorial boundaries. As they reached their observation positions, the morning light revealed a bear population that had fully adapted to post-storm conditions and integrated the previous day's territorial changes into their social structure. The stability of their behavioral patterns provided excellent opportunities for systematic observation and documentation. Sarah began photographing immediately, capturing images that documented the established territorial patterns and the subtle social interactions that maintained order within the bear community. Her photography served both artistic and scientific purposes, providing visual documentation of complex behavioral phenomena. Marcus positioned himself for optimal observation of individual bears, beginning the systematic identification and tracking procedures that formed the foundation of his research methodology. His detailed documentation would contribute to long-term population studies and behavioral pattern analysis. Dr. Morrison coordinated the team's activities while conducting her own observations of population dynamics and environmental interactions. Her oversight ensured that all research objectives were being addressed while maintaining proper safety protocols and emergency preparedness. The morning progressed with steady documentation of normal bear behaviors, providing valuable baseline data for comparison with previous observations and future research. The consistency of their findings confirmed the reliability of their research methodologies and the value of long-term observation programs. At approximately 9:30 a.m., the team observed an interesting development in the bear population dynamics. A female with 2 young cubs approached the fishing areas, creating new social tensions as protective maternal instincts interacted with established territorial boundaries. The female's arrival immediately changed the behavior patterns of nearby bears, with all individuals showing increased awareness and modified positioning to account for the presence of potentially dangerous protective instincts. Sarah documented the subtle but significant behavioral changes that rippled through the bear community. Marcus focused his attention on the complex social negotiations that occurred as the female established her family's position within the existing territorial structure. Her behavior demonstrated sophisticated assessment of risks and opportunities as she balanced her cubs' needs against potential threats from larger bears. The family group's integration into the fishing area proceeded gradually, with the female maintaining constant vigilance while teaching her cubs proper techniques for catching salmon. Her maternal behaviors provided fascinating insights into knowledge transfer mechanisms within bear populations. Dr. Morrison noted the successful adaptation of established territorial holders to accommodate the family group, demonstrating the flexibility and social sophistication of brown bear communities. The interactions provided valuable data about conflict avoidance and resource-sharing mechanisms. The observation session continued through the late morning with steady documentation of family group behaviors and their interactions with the broader bear population. The cubs' learning processes provided particular insights into behavioral development and socialization patterns within bear communities. As midday approached, the team prepared to conclude their morning observations and return to base camp for data processing and equipment maintenance. The consistent weather conditions and stable bear behaviors had provided ideal research conditions throughout their session. The return journey to Brooks Camp allowed time for preliminary discussion of the morning's observations and initial assessment of the data collected. The team's findings continued to support their research hypotheses while revealing new aspects of bear social behavior that warranted further investigation. Back at base camp, the team began the systematic processing of their morning's work, analyzing photographs, entering behavioral data, and updating research databases with their findings. The accumulated data was beginning to reveal important patterns in bear population dynamics and social adaptation mechanisms. Sarah's photograph processing revealed details that had not been apparent during real-time observation, including subtle behavioral cues and interaction patterns that contributed to scientific understanding of bear communication systems. Her images would serve as valuable research documentation and educational materials. Marcus analyzed his behavioral data in conjunction with previous observations, identifying trends and patterns that supported his research hypotheses about territorial flexibility and social adaptation. His findings contributed to broader understanding of brown bear population dynamics in protected wilderness areas. Dr. Morrison coordinated the team's data integration efforts, ensuring that all observations were properly documented and incorporated into comprehensive research databases. Her oversight maintained the scientific rigor necessary for meaningful research contributions. The afternoon provided time for equipment maintenance, research planning, and preparation for continued field operations. The team's systematic approach to data collection and documentation was producing valuable scientific insights while maintaining the highest standards of wildlife research ethics. As evening approached, the team conducted their daily debriefing session, reviewing the day's accomplishments and planning for future research activities. Their work was contributing to scientific understanding while providing valuable experience in wilderness research methodologies. Fletcher provided updates on park operations and weather forecasts, confirming continued favorable conditions for field research. The stability of environmental factors was facilitating comprehensive data collection and consistent observation protocols. The evening meal provided an opportunity for team members to discuss their research findings and share insights gained from their extensive observations of brown bear behavior. Their collaborative approach was enhancing the value of individual research efforts while building team expertise. Sarah spent the evening selecting and processing her best photographs from the day's session, preparing images that would serve both scientific and educational purposes. Her documentation was providing valuable visual records of brown bear behavior and social dynamics. Marcus continued his data analysis, comparing current observations with historical patterns to identify trends and changes in bear population behavior. His research was contributing to long-term conservation planning and wildlife management strategies for the Katmai ecosystem. Dr. Morrison completed her research documentation, ensuring that all scientific observations were properly recorded and integrated into ongoing research projects. Her work was maintaining the high standards necessary for meaningful contributions to brown bear research. As the team prepared for another night in the Alaska wilderness, they reflected on the successful progress of their research mission and the valuable insights they were gaining into one of North America's most magnificent wildlife populations. Their work was contributing to scientific understanding while providing unforgettable experiences in one of the world's most pristine natural environments. The night passed peacefully, with the natural sounds of the wilderness providing a constant reminder of the remarkable ecosystem they were privileged to study. The bear population continued their nocturnal activities, with occasional signs of movement along the riverbanks and through the surrounding forest. Dawn brought another day of excellent research conditions, with clear skies and calm weather providing optimal opportunities for continued observation and documentation. The team's enthusiasm for their work remained high, motivated by the significant scientific contributions they were making to brown bear research. During the morning briefing, Fletcher announced that their research mission was approaching its scheduled conclusion, with only 3 days remaining before their departure from Brooks Camp. The time constraint added urgency to their data collection efforts, while emphasizing the importance of maximizing their remaining opportunities. Sarah prepared her equipment, with particular attention to capturing comprehensive documentation of bear behaviors, knowing that her remaining time in the field was limited. Her photography had already produced significant results, but she was determined to complete her documentation project with the highest possible standards. Marcus reviewed his research objectives, identifying priority areas for his final data collection sessions. His behavioral studies had revealed important insights into brown bear social dynamics, but he wanted to confirm his findings with additional observations and systematic documentation. Dr. Morrison outlined the team's remaining research goals, emphasizing the importance of completing comprehensive datasets and ensuring that all observations were properly documented for future analysis. Her scientific leadership was guiding the team toward meaningful research conclusions. The team departed for their final series of field observations at 7:30 a.m., following familiar routes but maintaining the vigilance and professionalism that had characterized their entire mission. Their destination was a comprehensive observation area that would allow for systematic monitoring of the entire bear population. As they reached their observation positions, the morning revealed a bear community that had achieved stable territorial relationships and consistent behavioral patterns. The predictability of their activities provided excellent opportunities for systematic documentation and comprehensive behavioral analysis. Sarah began her final photography sessions with determination to capture the essence of brown bear behavior and the remarkable ecosystem of Katmai National Park. Her images would serve as lasting documentation of one of North America's most significant wildlife populations. Marcus positioned himself for optimal observation of the bear individuals he'd been tracking throughout their mission, preparing to complete his behavioral documentation and gather final data for his research analysis. His systematic approach was producing valuable insights into brown bear population dynamics. Dr. Morrison coordinated the team's final observation session while conducting her own comprehensive assessment of bear population status and behavioral patterns. Her scientific oversight was ensuring that their research mission would conclude with meaningful contributions to brown bear research. The morning proceeded with intensive documentation of bear behaviors, social interactions, and environmental adaptations. The team's accumulated experience and refined techniques were producing high-quality data that would support significant scientific conclusions. At approximately 10 a.m., the team witnessed a remarkable display of brown bear behavior that provided a fitting conclusion to their research mission. A complex social interaction involving multiple territorial males demonstrated the sophisticated communication and conflict resolution mechanisms that governed bear society. Sarah captured the entire interaction through her telephoto lens, documenting the subtle behavioral cues and dramatic displays that characterize brown bear social dynamics. Her photographs would provide valuable scientific documentation while serving as powerful educational materials. Marcus focused his attention on the detailed behavioral patterns exhibited during the interaction, recognizing it as a significant example of the social phenomena he had been studying throughout his research mission. His documentation would contribute important insights to brown bear behavioral research. Dr. Morrison observed the interaction from a population dynamics perspective, noting how individual behaviors contributed to overall community stability and territorial maintenance. Her analysis would inform future wildlife management strategies and conservation planning efforts. The complex social interaction concluded with a peaceful resolution that demonstrated the effectiveness of brown bear communication systems and conflict avoidance mechanisms. The observation provided valuable insights into the social sophistication of these remarkable animals. Following the dramatic interaction, the bear population quickly returned to normal fishing and territorial activities, their behavior patterns showing no lasting effects from the temporary social tension. The resilience and adaptability of their social systems impressed the research team. As the morning observation session neared its conclusion, the team conducted final documentation of bear population status and behavioral patterns. Their comprehensive data collection had produced significant insights into brown bear ecology and social dynamics. The return journey to Brooks Camp provided time for preliminary assessment of their final field session and reflection on the accomplishments of their research mission. The team had successfully completed their scientific objectives while gaining valuable experience in wilderness research methodologies. Back at base camp, the team began the process of consolidating their research data and preparing final documentation of their findings. The accumulated observations had produced significant contributions to brown bear research and wildlife management understanding. Sarah's photograph processing revealed the remarkable quality and scientific value of her documentation, with images that captured both the beauty and complexity of brown bear behavior. Her work would serve research, education, and conservation purposes for years to come. Marcus analyzed his final behavioral data, confirming the patterns and trends he had identified throughout the research mission. His findings would contribute important insights to understanding of brown bear social dynamics and population management strategies. Dr. Morrison coordinated the preparation of comprehensive research reports that would document their findings and contribute to the scientific literature on brown bear behavior and ecology. Her leadership had guided the mission to successful completion with significant research accomplishments. The afternoon was devoted to final data processing, equipment preparation for departure, and completion of official research documentation. The team's systematic approach had produced valuable scientific contributions while maintaining the highest standards of wildlife research ethics. As their final evening at Brooks Camp approached, the team gathered for a comprehensive debriefing session that reviewed their research accomplishments and assessed the scientific value of their work. Their mission had exceeded expectations in terms of data collection, behavioral observations, and research insights. Fletcher provided final updates on park operations and expressed appreciation for the team's professional conduct and significant research contributions. Their work had enhanced understanding of brown bear populations while demonstrating effective methodologies for wilderness research. The final evening meal provided an opportunity for team members to reflect on their experiences and discuss the long-term implications of their research findings. Their work had contributed to scientific understanding while providing unforgettable experiences in one of the world's most remarkable wilderness areas. Sarah spent her final evening processing photographs and selecting images that best represented the remarkable brown bear behaviors they had documented. Her visual documentation would serve as lasting testimony to the sophistication and beauty of Alaska's brown bear populations. Marcus completed his data analysis and began preparing research papers that would communicate his findings to the scientific community. His behavioral studies had revealed important insights into brown bear social dynamics and environmental adaptation mechanisms. Dr. Morrison finalized research reports and coordinated the preparation of comprehensive documentation that would ensure their findings contributed effectively to brown bear research and conservation efforts. Her scientific leadership had guided the mission to successful completion. As the team prepared for their final night in the Alaska wilderness, they reflected on the remarkable experiences and significant scientific accomplishments of their research mission. Their work had contributed to understanding of brown bear behavior, while providing valuable insights for conservation and wildlife management efforts. The night passed quietly, with the natural sounds of the wilderness serving as a fitting conclusion to their intensive research mission. The bear population continued their activities with the patterns and behaviors the team had come to understand through weeks of careful observation. Dawn brought clear weather for their departure preparations, with excellent visibility, allowing final observations of the bear populations they had studied so intensively. The team's equipment was prepared for departure, but their memories and research contributions would remain as lasting legacies of their work. During the final morning briefing, Fletcher provided departure logistics while expressing appreciation for the team's research contributions and professional conduct throughout their mission. Their work had enhanced understanding of Katmai's brown bear populations while demonstrating effective wilderness research methodologies. The team conducted final equipment checks and completed their departure preparations, ensuring that all research materials and documentation were properly secured for transport. Their systematic approach extended to every aspect of their mission, including the conclusion of their fieldwork. As the departure time approached, the team took final photographs and observations of Brooks Camp and the surrounding wilderness that had been their home and laboratory for their intensive research mission. The memories and scientific insights they carried would influence their future work and understanding. The helicopter arrival for their departure provided a dramatic conclusion to their wilderness research mission. With aerial views of the bear populations and pristine landscapes they had studied so intensively, their departure marked the end of a successful research mission that had produced significant scientific contributions. As Brooks Camp disappeared below them, the team reflected on their remarkable experiences and the valuable scientific insights they had gained into brown bear behavior and ecology. Their research had contributed to understanding while providing unforgettable experiences in one of North America's most pristine wilderness areas. The flight to Anchorage provided time for final discussions of their research findings and planning for the data analysis and publication processes that would communicate their insights to the scientific community. Their work would continue to contribute to brown bear research long after their departure from the field. Upon reaching Anchorage, the team began the process of returning to their respective institutions and initiating the analysis and publication phases of their research project. Their fieldwork had been completed successfully, but the scientific value of their mission would continue to grow through careful analysis and communication of their findings. Sarah's photographs would be processed and prepared for both scientific and educational use, serving as valuable documentation of brown bear behavior and the remarkable ecosystem of Katmai National Park. Her visual record would contribute to research, education, and conservation efforts for years to come. Marcus would continue his data analysis at his university, preparing research papers and thesis chapters that would communicate his findings about brown bear social dynamics and behavioral patterns. His work would contribute important insights to the scientific understanding of brown bear populations. Dr. Morrison would coordinate the preparation of comprehensive research reports and scientific publications that would ensure their collective findings contributed effectively to brown bear research and wildlife management understanding. Her leadership would continue to guide the project through its analysis and publication phases. The research mission to Brooks Camp had concluded successfully, with significant scientific accomplishments and valuable insights into brown bear behavior and ecology. The team's professional conduct and systematic approach had produced research contributions that would benefit conservation efforts and scientific understanding for years to come. Their experiences in the Alaska wilderness had provided not only scientific data, but also deep appreciation for the complexity and beauty of brown bear populations in their natural habitat. The memories and insights gained would influence their future work and contribute to ongoing efforts to understand and protect these remarkable animals. The conclusion of their fieldwork marked the beginning of a new phase in their research project, as data analysis and publication efforts would extend the scientific value of their observations and contribute to the broader understanding of brown bear behavior and conservation needs. As each team member returned to their respective responsibilities and institutions, they carried with them the knowledge, experiences, and scientific insights gained from their intensive research mission in one of North America's most pristine wilderness areas. Their work would continue to contribute to brown bear research and conservation for years to come. The legacy of their research mission would extend far beyond their individual careers, contributing to the scientific foundation necessary for effective conservation and wildlife management decisions that would protect brown bear populations and their habitats for future generations. Their dedication to scientific excellence and wilderness preservation had produced lasting contributions to both knowledge and conservation. Their story represents the ongoing efforts of researchers, photographers, and conservationists who dedicate their careers to understanding and protecting the remarkable wildlife populations that inhabit our planet's remaining wilderness areas. Through their work, future generations will benefit from enhanced understanding and improved conservation strategies for brown bears and other wildlife species. The lessons learned and insights gained from their research mission continue to influence scientific understanding and conservation planning, ensuring that their contributions extend far beyond their immediate research objectives. Their work exemplifies the value of dedicated field research in advancing both scientific knowledge and practical conservation applications. As their story concludes, it serves as inspiration for future researchers and conservationists who will continue the vital work of understanding and protecting the remarkable wildlife populations that depend on our commitment to wilderness preservation and scientific research. Their legacy demonstrates the lasting value of dedicated scientific investigation and professional excellence in wildlife research.